Jiang naturally understood Rin Yunch's feelings. The way I felt about my own sister, Jiang Qiaoying, was no different. Captain Jiang, my sister told me everything just now. Thank you for taking care of her these past few days. Rin Yunche wiped away her tears and gave me a sincere, deep bow. No need for formalities. Your sister is a member of the Stone Shadow team. It's my responsibility. I waved it off. Being thanked so formally by such a beautiful girl made me a bit unsure of how to react. Yunche, come with us. We're leaving this place soon. Everyone on the team is great. If you come with us, you won't have to worry about anything ever again. Rin Shiyu stepped forward and took Rin Yunche's hand. No, I can't leave yet. Rin Yunche fell silent for a moment before shaking her head. I couldn't help but be surprised. Staying with Chang Shunkai, for a fragile girl like Rin Yunche, was no different from living next to a wild beast. And yet, even though her sister had come for her, she didn't want to go. Are you afraid of Chang Shinkai's revenge? Don't worry, we already have a plan. We can get out of here before he even has a chance to react. Rin Shiyu spoke, her voice remaining calm. But Rin Yunche still shook her head. It's not that I'm afraid. It's that I really can't leave. What? Why not? Rin Shiyu finally lost her composure. After all the hardships she went through to find her, Yunche was now saying she didn't want to leave. This was an outcome she had never even considered. Maybe you all should stay here instead. I don't want to be separated from you again, sister. Everyone can stay here. With your strength, I'm sure you could establish yourselves in no time. Rin Yunche turned to me as she spoke. I was slightly taken aback. What was she saying? I never expected her to be the one trying to convince me to stay. Watch out. Killing intent. Suddenly, Rin Shiyu's expression shifted, and she shouted a warning to the Stone Shadow team. The moment the words left her mouth, a massive explosion rocked the room. The north window shattered completely as a figure lunged inside like a cannonball. Shards of broken glass flew everywhere like daggers, shredding everything in their path. Zhang Hai reacted instantly, letting out a roar as he hoisted a wooden table to shield me and the others. Countless sharp glass fragments embedded themselves deep into the tabletop. Only then did I get a clear look at the intruder. He had glowing red eyes, and his body was covered in red hair as stiff as steel needles. Standing over 2 meters tall, he radiated a foul, bloody aura. Though his face looked somewhat different, those red eyes and that familiar evil energy made me realize exactly who he was. Chang Shunkai. Hand over the evolution crystal, and I'll let you keep your corpses intact. Chang Shunkai was brimming with murderous intent, his gaze locked onto me. He couldn't stomach the humiliation from the Stone Shadow team, and he certainly didn't want to pay a high price for the crystal. So, in the middle of the night, he decided to resort to murder and robbery. But this didn't surprise me. I had been on high alert, prepared for any threat. Just as I raised my submachine gun, my body suddenly froze. The barrel felt like it was being yanked by an invisible force, suddenly pointing straight at the ceiling. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan's expressions paled. Their weapons were doing the same thing. Even with Zhang Hai's immense strength, he could barely hold onto his gun as the barrel began to creak and bend. What? Did you think I came here alone just to gamble with my life? I wouldn't have dared to show up if I wasn't sure I could pin you all down. The cells in my body are magnetic. I can magnetize your guns and blades, allowing me to control your very weapons. Chang Shinkai's voice was cold, his lips curling into a confident smirk. Seeing the shocked expressions on our faces, he looked immensely satisfied. Cell magnetization. I frowned. This ability was far more bizarre and dangerous than Yang Feng's plant control. Chang Shinkai stopped this. In the midst of the suffocating tension, a soft voice suddenly rang out, breaking the silence. Everyone was stunned. Yunche? Why are you here? Chang Shinkai was shocked. Only now did he realize that Rin Yunche was also in the room. He never expected her to be here. When he attacked, he hadn't noticed the two girls standing together in the dim room. At this moment, Rin Yunche still looked as fragile as ever, but her eyes were completely different, cold and distant, to the point where Chang Shunkai felt like he didn't even know her. His gaze shifted to the girl standing next to Rin Yunche. She looked just as delicate but shared a striking resemblance, especially their slightly grayish eyes. A bad feeling suddenly surged in Chang Shinkai's heart, his eyes widening in shock. So, These people came here for Rin Yunshe. Are you bastards trying to kidnap Yunshe? Yunshe, get over here. Chang Shunkai roared in fury. In his eyes, Rin Yunshe was his personal property. No one was allowed to touch her. If anyone dared, they would surely pay in blood. This is my sister, Rin Yunshe replied calmly. Shadow's voice echoed in my head, signaling that the truck engine had started. Sister? Chang Shinkai's face instantly turned a deep shade of red, his gaze toward Rin Yunshe becoming as sharp as a knife. Yunshe, are you planning to leave with them? No way. You have to ask for my permission first. Chang Shinkai's killing intent exploded. Metal objects throughout the room began to vibrate and wobble uncontrollably. Whether Yunshe stays or goes is none of your business. If you insist on standing in our way, then we'll let our bullets do the talking. Rin Shiyu spoke coldly. Her aura was naturally icy. Even though her voice carried no anger or malice, no one dared to doubt the resolve behind her words. I'll handle this myself. Rin Yunshe stepped out from behind Rin Shiyu, her dark gaze staring straight at Chang Shunkai. Chang Shunkai, you truly disappoint me. She let out a soft sigh. Why are you still so foolish and short-sighted? All you know is how to kill. Banju City was supposed to become something better, like those other safe islands. A place where we could build a real sanctuary and restore our lives before the apocalypse. But because of killers like you, this place has turned into the mess it is now. Rin Yunch's voice was gentle, but every word hit Chang Shunkai like a needle, making his head throb with pain. The woman who had never dared to talk back to him was now saying these things to his face. Chang Shinkai's breathing became heavy, his lungs feeling like they were about to burst. Rin Yunshe, are you betraying me? Chang Shinkai screamed in a fit of rage. You know exactly how cruel I can be. You'll die a miserable death. Don't think I'll spare you just because you're Rin Yunshe. If you betray me, I will kill you. He roared, sounding nearly insane. I never forced you. You think you're special? I only put up with you because I respected you. I was going to wait until you were willing, but not anymore. Today, I'm going to make you mine, and then I'm going to kill you. I want you to understand that your body and your life are both under my control. You still don't get it. Rin Yunshe looked at him and shook her head. Get what? What the hell are you talking about? Chang Shunkai snarled. Right then, he felt a sharp, agonizing pain in his head, hitting him like a tidal wave. Damn it. Why does my head hurt now of all times? A strange itch began to spread up his nose. Chang Shunkai instinctively opened his mouth and let out a violent sneeze. Then, to his horror, he realized that small pink mushrooms, about the size of a finger, were starting to grow out of his nostrils. It didn't stop there. From his ears, eyes, and every pore on his skin, wherever there was an opening, pink mushrooms and lichen began to sprout rapidly. Chang Shinkai was in so much pain he could barely stand it. Pink, blister-like tumors began to bulge across his skin. Rin Yunshe gently snapped her fingers. A small tumor on Chang Shinkai's face instantly exploded, spraying blood and flesh everywhere. He screamed in agony, but right where the wound had burst, a tiny mushroom immediately began to grow. An ability user. I couldn't hide my shock. It was clear that the grotesque transformations on Chang Shinkai's body were all Rin Yunch's doing. She was an ability user, and her power was incredibly twisted. The energy fluctuations coming from her weren't that strong, but what was happening proved that her ability was anything but weak. The coldness in Rin Yunch's eyes made it feel like she had become a completely different person. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan stood frozen, a chill running down their spines. The girl who looked so fragile just a moment ago was now acting with heartless cruelty without even blinking. Even Rin Shiyu was stunned. Yunshe, what did you do to me? You dare betray me. I'll kill you. Chang Shinkai tried to endure the pain, his trembling hands reaching out toward Rin Yunshe. The metal necklace around her neck vibrated slightly. Rin Yunshe remained calm, raising her right hand and pressing two fingers together. Another explosion rang out. Chang Shunkai let out a gut-wrenching scream as both of his elbows exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, and his arms instantly went limp. Immediately after, his leg joints and chest also exploded in succession. Within moments, he was covered in blood and collapsed to the ground. How? How is this possible? When did you do this to me? Isn't your ability plant-related? Chang Shinkai gasped for air, looking at Rin Yunshe in pure agony. You often drank my herbal tea, didn't you? Rin Yinshe said indifferently. Herbal tea? Chang Shinkai was startled. No, I checked it thoroughly. There were no strange ingredients in it. My ability is spores, Rin Yinshe replied calmly. She suddenly raised her hand and blew a soft breath toward Chang Shinkai. The surrounding air was instantly filled with countless tiny spores. Some were as large as a finger. Others were as small as dust, invisible to the naked eye, appearing only as a faint haze of light. These spores drifted and quickly took root on his body. In just a few moments, mushrooms and lichen had completely covered him. Ever since you brought me to Banju City, I've been planting spores on you. Your ability is very strong, making it hard for spores to survive. But given enough time, I managed to weave a network of spores throughout your entire body. Now, your life is in my hands. Rin Yinshe looked down at him, her voice devoid of emotion. That's why you could never control me. And I will never let anyone control me. Do you understand? She slowly walked closer to Chang Shinkai, her eyes terrifyingly cold. All her previous fragility seemed to have vanished completely. Zhang Hai, Sun Kuan, and the others were all speechless. No one expected that Rin Yinshe, who was trembling just minutes ago, now held the power of life and death over Chang Shinkai. Impressive move. Chang Shinkai slowly regained consciousness after the shock. He looked up and laughed maniacally, coughing up pink, frothy blood. Even his blood had been overtaken by the spores. What's so wrong with death? Rin Yinshe replied flatly. Every era requires sacrifice. If tens of thousands must die to trade for future peace, then it is a price worth paying. When that time comes, you can gain status, power, and a stable life. Ordinary people will also live in a more orderly environment. That would be good for them too. She paused for a moment before continuing. Perhaps you think I don't have the ability to control such a vast territory. Even if I get rid of the bloodthirsty ones, there will still be those who refuse to listen. In that case, how could a mere girl like me make everyone submit and build a safe zone? I didn't answer. A faint smile appeared in Rin Yunch's eyes as she looked toward Chang Shinkai. No, I should call you Chang Jishan. Even though only Chang Shinkai has a split personality, there are plenty of others who can be controlled by my spores. What I tested on him has already proven that. Hearing this, I frowned. This was exactly what made me feel uneasy. From the moment I saw Rin Yunch's methods, I realized her true intention. Through her ability, she wanted to build a massive empire of spore-controlled puppets. I don't know much about business, I said in a low voice. But this piece you speak of, if it's built on countless living puppets living in a world of your own illusions, then how is it any different? Rin Yinshe smiled, but she didn't argue. What's so bad about that? At least they'll be living in peace. Just kill me, Rin Yinshe. I admit I was wrong. I give up. Chang Shinkai was nearly losing his mind. Looking at him now, Rin Yunch's gaze became strange, tinged with a hint of mockery. I'm not going to kill you, because you're still useful. No, I should say Chang Jishan is still useful. She paused for a moment, her voice dropping. Chang Jishan, come out. I know you're inside Chang Shinkai's body. This body is about to die. Do you really want to die with it? Rin Yinshe knelt down slightly and whispered into Chang Shinkai's ear. Chang Jishan. I had no idea what Rin Yinshe was talking about. Why was she calling Chang Shinkai by a different name? Right then, Rin Xiu suddenly pointed at Chang Shinkai on the ground, her voice trembling. Him. There's someone else inside his body. That person's mental energy waves are strengthening rapidly. Chang Shinkai suddenly began to convulse violently, his hands clawing at the floor. The red glow in his eyes quickly faded, and his body began to shrink back down. The violent, overwhelming aura around him vanished instantly, replaced by a dark, gloomy energy. His body gradually returned to its normal appearance, but his eyes had turned pitch black. He looked at Rin Yinshe with fear and avoidance, his face full of terror and his lips trembling. Don't kill me. I don't want to die. Rin Yinshe, since you know I exist, you must know I'm not someone who likes to kill. I'm terrified of dying. His voice was strangely weak, a complete 180 from his previous aggression. A split personality? I understood immediately. This was the other personality hidden within Chang Shinkai's body. It wasn't surprising that Rin Xiu felt unusual mental waves, as this personality was usually suppressed by Chang Shinkai's brutality and arrogance. Chang Jishan, Relax. I'm not going to kill you. Rin Yunche looked at him, a spark of light in her eyes. After Chang Shinkai's near-death battle, when I discovered your existence, I knew you were the ally I needed. If not for that, I wouldn't have kept him around for so long. Chang Shinkai was too hard to control. He wasn't a reliable ally. An ally? You. Are you really not going to kill me? Chang Jieshan asked suspiciously, his eyes still filled with fear. Rin Yunche blew a soft breath, and the spores, pink mushrooms, and lichen on Chang Jieshan's body fell off one by one. In an instant, aside from his wounds, there was no trace of any plant life left on him. I won't kill you. Your ability is even stronger than Chang Shinkai's, but you don't have a taste for slaughter. You're exactly who I need. As long as you're obedient, I'll let you continue being the leader of the Berserker Alliance. Her voice carried an indescribable charm. Chang Jieshan, like a child being coaxed, nodded happily. I'll listen to you, Sister Yunche. Very good. Just remember one thing. Never let Chang Shinkai appear again, and I won't kill you. Got it. Chang Jieshan nodded repeatedly. The hall fell into absolute silence. Huh. So Chang Shinkai is on our side now? Zhang Hai laughed carefreely. Sun Kuan immediately shot him a glare. Zhang Hai caught the look, realized he'd said something wrong, and obediently shut his mouth. Captain Jiang, you've seen it all now. Rin Yunche turned to look at me and Rin Shiyu. What do you think of my power and my plan now? I have Chang Shinkai under control, and the Berserker Alliance is in my hands. Before long, the Falling Star Society, the Huyang People's Front, and even neighboring areas like Subei and Anhui, all of it will be under my control. I want to build a massive safe zone where everyone can live in equality and happiness. Her eyes burned with two flames of fanatical passion. Subei? Hearing that name, I frowned slightly. The image of Hai Xiang flashed through my mind. She was definitely in Subei. There was no denying that Rin Yunche's plan was grand and enticing, but my instincts made me feel uneasy. I never expected the person I wanted to save to be so different from Rin Shiyu. Soft on the outside, but inside, Rin Yunche harbored massive ambition and an incredibly firm will. She was clearly someone willing to do whatever it took to achieve her goals. The fact that she could endure being by Chang Shinkai's side for so long said it all. Ren Shiyu stood beside her in silence, a sense of estrangement from her own sister growing in her heart. So, the war between the Berserker Alliance and the Falling Star Society. Was that all you're doing? My doing? Not exactly. Rin Yunche replied indifferently. Even without me, they would have fought each other to the death eventually. Chang Shinkai was always like that, and the Falling Star Society isn't exactly full of saints. They'd killed dozens of people over a single supermarket. If I pushed anything, I just used a bit of information and some tactics to make the war break out sooner. She took Rin Shiyu's hand, her voice becoming earnest. Captain Jiang, I really hope the two of you will stay and help me. You have resources from the Zhonghai Safe Island. With your support, I'm certain I can reach my goal much faster. She paused, then continued. Don't you both need level 2 mutant crystals? If you agree to help me, I'll give you 2 of them right now. Rin Shiyu's gray eyes flickered with complex emotions. She couldn't understand how her sister had come up with such a massive plan. Since the apocalypse started and they were separated, Rin Yunche seemed to have become a completely different person. I refuse, I said flatly. Why? Rin Yunche trembled slightly, the warmth in her eyes vanishing, replaced by coldness. Your goal is noble, I replied calmly. But if you carry it out, countless people will die. I didn't say anything more. Facing Rin Yunche's fanaticism, there was no point in further discussion. I turned to look at Rin Shiyu standing beside me. Yunche? Looking at her ambitious sister, Rin Shiyu's gaze became incredibly complicated. She had recovered from her initial shock and understood perfectly well that Rin Yunche's ideology wouldn't change with just a few words of advice. As sisters, she knew the stubbornness of the Rin family all too well. Once they chose a path, they would follow it to the very end. Sister, I came to Banju only to find you and take you away. But now it seems you won't be coming with me. I just hope you can live well in the future. Rin Shiyu's voice shook slightly as she let out a long sigh. You want to leave now? You really don't intend to help me? Rin Yunche caught the hidden meaning in those words, and her body trembled. If it were anyone else, she might have considered using force, even controlling them with spores. But with her own sister, she would never do such a thing. We still have things to take care of here. Once we're done, we'll leave, I spoke up. Take care of what? You're looking for the plant that secretes active metal, aren't you? Rin Yinshe turned to look at me. I was slightly startled, not understanding how she knew my purpose. Don't be surprised. Earlier, when Chang Shunkai used his magnetic power, a small piece of active metal on you was pulled out. Even though you recovered it quickly, I still saw it. You got that from Wang Shifu, didn't you? Yes, we killed Wang Shifu, I replied steadily. Not surprising. I was wondering who had the guts to kill a district chief of the Berserker Alliance, and so easily at that. Turns out it was you. Good. Wang Shifu was Chang Shinkai's loyal dog, always causing trouble for me. He deserved to die. Rin Yinshe spoke as she pulled off her dusty white gloves and tossed them aside. If you want to find that plant, I can offer you protection. Tomorrow morning, come with my team into the Forbidden Zone. That plant only grows in the Forbidden Zone. How much you can collect depends on your own skills. This is the most I can help. As she spoke, her gaze lingered on Rin Shiyu. Rin Shiyu looked back, her expression very calm. Protection, huh? That's an interesting offer. I gave a faint smile. To me, protection wasn't that important. As long as I could get straight into the Forbidden Zone and avoid unnecessary trouble, that was for the best. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan glanced at each other and smirked. Perhaps in Rin Yunch's eyes, the Stone Shadow team was just a fairly strong survival squad. You all should rest here tonight. I'll have Jeshan arrange another room for you. We'll head into the Forbidden Zone early tomorrow morning. Rin Yinshe stood by the shattered window, her back to us, her voice soft. She opened her fair palm and blew a gentle breath. Countless colorful spores, like vibrant bubbles, drifted out with the wind into the dark city. Early the next morning, the entire Berserker Alliance was unusually restless. In contrast, the market, which was usually the loudest place, was eerily quiet. The streets were empty. By Chang Shinkai's order, no unauthorized personnel were allowed into the Berserker Alliance for the next 2 days. Even stranger was the silence from the Falling Star Society. The usual sounds of explosions had vanished. Sung Fook Road, which previously belonged to the Falling Star Society, was now occupied by the Berserker Alliance. Barbed wire, 2-meter-deep trenches, and makeshift defensive walls had turned the road into a literal battlefield. The ground was riddled with craters, and corpses lay scattered everywhere. At that moment, behind a massive wall, 13 SUVs and several motorcycles had gathered behind a heavy armored truck. Beyond that wall lay the Forbidden Zone, once the busiest commercial center of Banju City. Past the wall, one could see skyscrapers covered in thick vines, shattered glass walls, and dense green moss. The scene was suffocatingly gloomy. A large opening in the wall was sealed with metal scraps. Standing near it, one could clearly hear the horrifying hissing of the undead inside. In front of the wall, a sea of people crowded together, 7 district chiefs, over 100 ability users, and several hundred survivalist warriors stood in dense ranks. At the front, Chang Shunkai and Rin Yinshe stood side by side. Chiefs, are the missions clear? Ability users with high speed are in charge of collection. Everyone else is on guard and defense duty. Rin Yunch's voice was as gentle as ever, but it was loud enough for every word to reach everyone's ears. The morning breeze blew past, fluttering her white dress. She looked like a small flower in the middle of a battlefield. The lawyer stood closest to her, his eyes filled with clear fanaticism. In contrast, Chang Shunkai beside her was acting strange. He was rarely this silent, and his gaze toward Rin Yinshe even held a hint of wariness. Faced with this silent takeover of power, no one dared to object. Furthermore, the Venom Master fully supported Rin Yinshe, which forced any lingering doubts to be swallowed back down. My teammates and I stood behind them, watching the scene. I had already begun to understand. Rin Yunch's infiltration of the Berserker Alliance had reached a terrifying level. At that moment, Rin Yinshe looked over at Chang Shunkai. He immediately waved his hand. Move out. Everyone move out. Be careful. I'll send a few SUVs and warriors to follow and protect your truck. Before leaving, Rin Yinshe walked up to Rin Shiyu and whispered in her ear. Rin Shiyu nodded silently. Boom. The heavy truck in the lead smashed through the makeshift gate. A line of trucks and SUVs followed closely behind. Rat-tat-tat. Distant gunfire erupted, mingled with the ear-piercing shrieks of the undead. Once the vehicles had moved deep into the forbidden zone, I looked around the gloomy landscape and warned Ren Xiu. Xiu, stay sharp. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan immediately went on high alert, their eyes scanning in all directions. This place felt far more dangerous than the area outside the walls. Outside, there were still survivors living, and many large trees had been cut down. Even though it looked like a forest, it at least felt habitable. But here in the forbidden zone, sycamore trees rose dozens of meters high, their dense canopies blocking out the light, letting only a few faint rays filter through. Some shops along the road were pierced by massive branches. The concrete road was torn apart by giant roots and weeds that grew taller than a person. Fortunately, traces of fire were everywhere, making it possible to identify a few paths. Clearly, the Berserker Alliance had burned this area not long ago. Behind my vehicle, an SUV carrying over a dozen Berserker Alliance warriors slowed down. One of them grumbled, "What is this mining truck even doing here? They aren't even our people. Why do we have to protect them?" The heavy truck crushed the road surface, leaving deep tire tracks, but it was incredibly clunky on the narrow path. Exactly, and we have to guard them so closely? They're at the back of the convoy. If anything happens, I'm not stupid enough to rush in and die for them. Those complaints were intentionally loud enough for my teammates and me to hear clearly. Even though Ren Yunche had seized high-level power, not everyone truly submitted to her. These kids have some nerve, talking trash right in front of us. Zhang Hai rubbed his hands, clearly annoyed. "Ignore them," I replied indifferently. But inside, suspicion was growing. I noticed the convoy had only encountered a few scattered zombie attacks. The numbers were low, and a few ability users handled them easily. This didn't fit the reputation of the Forbidden Zone, which was supposed to be the largest concentration of undead in Banju City. They were being squeezed from three directions by the Berserker Alliance, the Falling Star Society, and the Huyang People's Front. There was no way it could be this peaceful. There are too many zombies. On the buildings on both sides. Ren Xiu suddenly spotted something wrong, her voice trembling as she immediately shared her mental vision with me. My heart tightened. In that vision, the skyscrapers on both sides were packed with dense red dots on the third, fourth, and fifth floors. Some dots were even crawling higher. From the outside, you could only see a few stragglers, but inside, it was a perfect trap. Among them, 3 red dots had exceptionally strong mental fluctuations. 3 mutant zombies. An ambush. I immediately understood why the horde was staying still. They were clearly being controlled by the mutants. Facing this type, I didn't dare be careless. They were like the brains of the horde, possessing combat instincts and command capabilities. Extremely dangerous. I quickly scanned the terrain and realized our mining truck had already entered the ambush zone. Fall back. Activate the base vehicle's first form. Break formation and change course. I immediately gave the order to Shadow, not hesitating for a second to split from the Berserker Alliance convoy. Virum. The mining truck transformed in an instant, returning to its mid-sized bus form and activating high-speed mode. The engine roared, tires spun, and the vehicle lunged backward. What the? The truck just turned into a bus? The warriors in the SUV running alongside us couldn't hide their shock. Just as the bus accelerated, a long howl erupted from the buildings on both sides. Crash, crash, crash. Windows shattered in a rain of glass as countless zombies lunged straight down. God, zombies! A warrior screamed in panic. Retreat. The others immediately opened fire. The ability user in the back of the SUV turned pale. He wanted to run, but he feared Chang Shinkai's ruthlessness. He gritted his teeth and reached out to attack the nearest zombie. Boom. The bus reversed over 100 meters, its tires leaving deep grooves in the road, but a few zombies still managed to land on the roof. One was a little girl in a tattered princess dress, her bulging grayish-white eyes staring as she crawled toward the cockpit. Before her fingers could touch the glass, Shadow appeared behind her like a ghost, driving a dagger straight into her head. In just moments, Shadow had cleared the zombies off the vehicle. The bus swerved through a few streets before stopping in front of a large plaza. In the center of the plaza, the base of an old flagpole had cracked open, creating a massive cavern. Weeds grew thick around it, and a row of abandoned cars stood in a line. The ground was covered in white frost, proving a horrific massacre had once taken place here. When the vehicle stopped, the chassis was still vibrating slightly. Rin Xiu was in deep shock. She felt something hard pressing against her waist, causing a sharp pain. She had been so focused on her mental scanning that she hadn't noticed it until now. Now that she relaxed, she reached for her waist and froze. Two mutant cores, radiating shimmering energy, lay quietly in her hand. Staring at them, Rin Xiu's eyes flickered. She suddenly remembered the moment her sister had leaned in close before they left. At that time, she had felt something lightly touch her waist. Perhaps it was at that very moment that Rin Yunche had secretly left these behind. Take them. Rin Xiu silently handed the two cores to me. Level 2 mutant cores. I immediately felt the familiar energy fluctuations, and my eyes couldn't help but show my surprise. I turned to look at Rin Xiu. She only gave a faint, helpless smile. Just by looking at her expression, I understood everything. Even though we had refused her invitation to stay, Rin Yunche still found a way to give us these two level 2 mutant cores. Mutant plant energy fluctuations detected. Suddenly, the seed's voice rang in my head. My heart skipped a beat, a surge of joy rising within me. From the very beginning, I had no intention of staying with Rin Yunche's team. With the seed in my possession, I had a much greater advantage in searching for mutant plants. Furthermore, there were bound to be many mutant plants. Going with her convoy would only make things more complicated. Half an hour later, after a fierce battle, one ability user was dead and two SUVs were destroyed, but the convoy finally managed to repel the zombie ambush. On the ground, zombies and the bodies of several Berserker Alliance warriors were piled on top of each other. Only then did Rin Yunche realize that the mining truck at the back of the convoy had disappeared. An ability user who had been running near my vehicle was now missing an arm, blood gushing out. Facing Rin Yunche's cold gaze, despite his agonizing pain, he didn't dare delay. The mining truck, it transformed into a bus. When the zombies attacked, it broke formation and sped away. I don't know where they went. Broke formation? Rin Yunche froze for a moment, her brow furrowing. Why would they split off? It's so dangerous here. Will my sister be okay? A flash of worry appeared in her eyes. No matter what, that was her only remaining family. Rin Yunche's face darkened, her gaze sharp as she looked at the ability user. Call for more men immediately. Take 5 guns and go find that bus. You must find them. The seed reminded me. The mutant plant is deep inside this crevice. I stood before a pitch-black crevice that looked like a cave entrance, my heart feeling heavy. The opening was barely over a meter wide. You had to crouch low to get inside. If there was something dangerous inside, the risk would be immense. No mental fluctuations detected, Rin Xiu said after using her scanning ability for a while. Shadow moved nimbly, taking out scattered zombies in the brush, while Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan split up to guard 3 directions. Once everything was secure, I crawled into the crevice. It was pitch black inside, but that didn't hinder my vision. The cavern was large, looking like the den of a mutant beast. The ground was torn up by sharp claws. My eyes stopped when I saw a massive pile of bones deep inside. It was the carcass of a mutant beast, over 3 meters long and a meter high, dried up with only skin and a few organs left. In its abdominal cavity was a large wound, and inside was a core about the size of a pigeon egg. A level 1 mutant core. I smiled faintly. Though I wasn't sure how the beast died, finding a core was still a stroke of luck. A cluster of sharp thorns grew out of the carcass, but other than that, I saw no sign of the plant that could secrete active metal. Mutant plant energy detected. Mutant energy detected. The seed system kept alerting me in my head. I frowned, wondering where the hell the mutant plant was. Regardless, I decided to take the level 1 core first. I stepped forward, reaching my hand toward the beast's abdomen. At that exact moment, disaster struck. From beneath the carcass, a mass of sharp thorns suddenly lunged upward, kicking up clouds of dirt. Under the soil were countless thorns as sharp as metal, and the bush also sprayed a foul-smelling slime directly at me. In a split second, my combat instincts kicked in. I lunged backward, avoiding most of the sharp thorns. But a few thorns and some slime still hit me, burning holes in my clothes. Thanks to my enhanced defense, The slime only left a few white streaks and a slight stinging sensation on my skin. Captain Jiang, what happened? Zhang Hai and Shadow rushed in, arriving just in time to see me crawling out of the crevice looking quite disheveled. Behind me, a massive thorn bush covered in dirt slithered out of the cave mouth. Realizing it hadn't caught its prey, it slowly retreated. A mutant plant. Zhang Hai's eyes widened. I nodded. In my head, the seed confirmed that this bush was indeed the mutant plant I was looking for. I didn't expect there to be more than one type here. Besides the one that secretes active metal, there was also this predatory mutant plant that knew how to hide and hunt. Bring the base vehicle over. Use the mechanical arms to dig up this mutant plant. I let out a breath, my heart still racing. This plant was too dangerous. Even Rin Xiu's mental ability couldn't detect it. If I could bring it back for research, it would surely become a terrifying weapon. Following my command, the two mechanical arms of the base vehicle reached into the cave. Under Shadow's control, they were as flexible as an extension of her own body, sensing every movement inside. Not long after, the mutant plant was completely uprooted, and the level 1 core fell into my hands. Right then, the seed system continued its notification. Mutant plant detected. The mutant plant belongs to the verbena family. It is a carnivorous plant that prefers acidic, nutrient-poor soil. Mutant plant captured. Conditions for opening the mutant plant research lab have been met. Requires 2 level 2 mutant cores and precious metals to unlock. Activating this hidden project will affect the future evolution path of the base vehicle. Reading the series of notifications, I couldn't help but be stunned. A hidden project that required 2 level 2 cores and a large amount of precious metal. Clearly, the mutant plant research lab was of a higher tier than even the energy research lab. Meanwhile, I still needed 3 level 2 cores to upgrade the base vehicle. After a quick consideration, I decided to prioritize opening the mutant plant research lab. Hidden projects aren't always available, and this one directly affected the future evolution of the base vehicle. Missing this chance might mean never getting another one. Decision made, I stored the mutant plant in the base vehicle's storage space. This plant might be picky about soil, but its vitality was incredibly strong. It wouldn't die anytime soon. Seed, continue scanning for mutant plant energy fluctuations nearby, I ordered in my head. A few hours later, under the scorching sun, a thunderous explosion rang out as a 100-meter-tall building completely collapsed. The ground shook violently, and thick dust billowed up, obscuring the sky. Debris flew everywhere, making the area even gloomier. Opposite the ruins, hundreds of zombies lunged forward, most of them being crushed into a bloody mess under the wreckage. The survivors were quickly finished off by Berserker Alliance warriors using sledgehammers to crush their skulls. Report: Sector 6 has blocked a major zombie assault. 16 regular soldiers killed, 2 ability users sacrificed. Report: Sector 1 has successfully destroyed the Tien Tuong building. 7 regular soldiers killed, 3 ability users injured, 2 level 1 mutant zombies eliminated. Reports were sent back to Rin Yunshe one after another. Their formation had moved deep into the Forbidden Zone, officially facing large-scale zombie attacks. Thanks to being well prepared with explosives and heavy weaponry, and with elites leading the charge, the Berserker Alliance was able to hold out against the crushing pressure. But Rin Yunshe understood perfectly well that with losses like these, the Berserker Alliance couldn't sustain this for long. Every warrior here was a core force for the ideal she pursued, so she needed to leave this place as soon as possible. However, the ability user team sent to find her sister, Rin Xiu, and my group hadn't returned yet, and she saw no sign of the bus either. Anxiety began to rise in Rin Yunch's heart. The only thing giving her comfort was the sight of 7 brilliant yellow flowers in a cultivation tank right in front of her. The petals rose from a stem that dug deep into the black soil, which was mixed with mutant beast meat and metal scraps like iron and copper. From the flower's pistil, drops of golden liquid metal were dripping down. This was exactly what she needed, active metal. Last time we marked 11 plants. There are still 4 left. Once we have enough, the Berserker Alliance can withdraw from here. Thinking this, Rin Yunshe couldn't help but worry again. Why hadn't my team returned? Right then, a sharp, bone-crushing sound rang out. Following the sound, Rin Yunshe saw a tall figure directly crushing a stray zombie, its body exploding into a pile of mangled flesh. The warriors standing nearby nearly collapsed in fear. Even the commanders of other sectors couldn't hide their terror. The current leader's ability, formerly Chang Shenkai, now Chang Jieshan, seemed to have completely changed and become much more terrifying. After killing the zombie, Chang Jieshan carefully stepped into the dark basement of the ruined building. A moment later, he stepped out, holding a yellow flower in his hand. I got it. He stood at a distance, speaking softly to Rin Yunshe. Even though she said she wouldn't kill him, Chang Jieshan still harbored an instinctive fear of this woman. Suddenly, he let out a groan. The small, thin roots of the flower in his hand, as hard as metal, had pierced his skin and begun to drink his blood ravenously. Bear with it for a bit. This flower loves blood and flesh. Hurry up and give it to me. Don't use your ability. Rin Yunshe gave the order in a low voice. Chang Jieshan didn't dare move, only able to grit his teeth against the pain before quickly tossing the yellow flower into the cultivation tank. Be more careful next time. Rin Yunshe carefully pulled each tiny root out of his hand, her voice gentle but cold. Yes. Chang Jieshan bowed his head, cold sweat drenching his forehead, his spirit nearly exhausted. By now, Chang Jieshan had become Rin Yunshe's right-hand man, specialized in fighting powerful zombies and collecting the rare yellow flowers. His ice ability helped reduce the danger on the road, but he was clumsy and careless. Almost every time, the flower roots would pierce his flesh to drink blood. He had endured this 7 or 8 times already. Suddenly, Chang Jieshan's body trembled slightly, his face twitching. At that moment, Rin Yunshe was focused on the map, checking the marked locations of the yellow flowers, so she didn't notice the abnormality. Move to Dongtan Street, Rin Yunshe ordered coldly. The Berserker Alliance's heavy truck roared to life, immediately heading toward Dongtan Street. Just as the convoy reached the entrance of Dongtan Street, an ear-piercing shriek suddenly erupted from deep within the neighborhood. That sound slammed into my chest like a heavy fist, making my breath hitch for a moment. An ability user from the Berserker Alliance turned pale as a ghost, stammering, a level 2 mutant zombie? Just hearing that shriek was enough to tell me. This kind of mental pressure was absolutely not something a level 1 mutant zombie could create. Rin Yunshe, standing at the front, looked grim. She knew better than anyone that there wasn't just one level 2 mutant zombie in this forbidden zone. Furthermore, they had extremely strong territorial instincts and often hunted each other to evolve. The Berserker Alliance had paid in blood to map out their activity ranges, so this route was supposed to avoid the danger zones entirely. However, zombies never follow human plans. And right now, the unexpected had happened. A level 2 mutant zombie was blocking their path. One could only say their luck was incredibly rotten. Right after the shriek, a massive boom echoed. From the top of a skyscraper, a giant figure fell like a cannonball, slamming into a mountain of scrapped cars. He stood there, his cold, soulless eyes staring intently at the Berserker Alliance convoy. He was tall and muscular, his bare upper body covered in crisscrossing scars. In his pupils were red veins that looked like writhing worms. In his hand, he gripped an enormous metal baseball bat. The aura he radiated was like a male lion dominating the savannah. Beside him were 7 or 8 level 1 mutant zombies. Then, from the buildings on both sides, from basements and shops along the road, zombies began to pour out in droves like disturbed ants, quickly splitting into 2 prongs to block every exit. The level 2 mutant zombie threw his head back and roared, then suddenly hoisted a scrap car with one hand and hurled it straight at the heavy truck where Rin Yunshe was sitting. Almost simultaneously, another roar erupted, this time from their side. A figure lunged upward, jumping 7 or 8 meters into the air, and delivered a violent kick to the old car. The force of the kick, weighing over 1,000 pounds, smashed the front of the car and sent it flying dozens of meters away. The Venom Master's muscles were bulging, his fangs bared, and thick golden fur covered his entire body. Lion bloodline, unmatched strength. He was the top among the 8 district chiefs. Immediately after, the level 2 mutant zombie stomped on the pile of cars, his body lunging forward like a cyclone as he threw a punch straight at the Venom Master. You and the Venom Master hold it back. Everyone else, retreat with me. Rin Yunche shouted at Chang Jieshan, who was standing by the heavy truck. A level 2 mutant zombie wasn't just terrifying because of its strength, but also because of its combat intelligence and commandability. It was enough to make the zombie horde fight far more effectively than usual. The Berserker Alliance could destroy it with firepower and abilities, but Rin Yunche didn't want to pay such a high price. However, Chang Jieshan stood frozen in place. Under the crushing pressure, his eyes were full of panic as he turned to beg, I'm scared. I don't want to go. Rin Yunche frowned, her gaze icy as she pressed 2 fingers together. Don't. Chang Jieshan's legs were shaking. Let go of the fear. Let me out. Chang Jieshan's pupils suddenly turned blood red, and a different voice erupted from his throat. Chang Shinkai's voice. Rin Yunche's eyes flickered, and she snapped her fingers. However, no spore explosion occurred. Only a tiny mushroom sprouted from Chang Jieshan's fingernail, which he immediately wiped away with a large, rough hand. Haha, Jieshan, do you see? The spores that woman planted in our body have been almost entirely wiped out by the roots of the yellow flowers drinking our blood. We don't have to fear her anymore. Come, fight with me. I'll protect you. Otherwise, we'll both die at her hands. Chang Jieshan was muttering insanely, leaving the other district chiefs confused and unsure of what to do. Jieshan, give the body back to me. A roar erupted, his pupils turning deep crimson as a violent, chaotic aura exploded from him. I saw Rin Yunche's expression change. She was shocked to realize that Chang Shinkai had completely taken over the body. With the plant spores removed, just a bit of pressure was enough for that brutal personality to dominate. With no other choice, Rin Yunche blew toward him. Multicolored spores filled the air and lunged, but they were swept away by a powerful gust of wind before they could get close. Rin Yunche, you still want to use those tricks on me? They won't work anymore. Chang Shinkai looked at her with eyes full of hatred. As much as he had loved her, he now loathed her just as much. My heart sank. I knew exactly how terrifying his strength was. Right then, I caught a movement behind him, followed by a gunshot. The bullet flew toward him but seemed to hit an invisible force field, immediately ricocheting away. Chang Shinkai turned his head, his gaze locking onto Zhang Shan, who was holding a rifle, his face pale. On Zhang Shan's arm, a pink mushroom ball had sprouted out of nowhere. Before I could even react, he spoke in a trembling voice. My lord, listen to me. Before he could finish, Chang Shinkai coldly waved his hand. With a whistle, a long steel bar from the ruins of the building shot out, impaling Zhang Shan's body. Blood bubbled in his throat as his body collapsed to the ground, motionless. My lord, what's wrong? The 6th district chief, a bald man, approached Chang Shinkai, his voice full of confusion. Chang Shinkai shot him a look and coldly stated that Rin Yunche was a traitor who had used her ability to control Zhang Shan. He hadn't even finished his sentence when the 6th chief suddenly lunged and hugged him tight. Big brother, I'm sorry. Flames erupted from the bald man's body, surging violently to engulf Chang Shinkai. That was his fire ability. Jieshan, listen to me. Chang Shinkai suddenly roared, his pupils shifting from red to pitch black. I know. His voice suddenly became weak, and his right arm radiated a freezing aura. The moment the flames touched that aura, they were extinguished. Before the 6th chief could understand what was happening, a blizzard slammed into him, covering his entire body. In just seconds, he had turned into an ice statue covered in white frost. With a dry crack, Chang Shinkai delivered a powerful kick. The ice statue shattered into countless pieces, and a layer of tiny ice moss rolled out from the frozen remains. Even the chiefs were controlled by you? You die today? Chang Shinkai lunged toward Rin Yunche like a hurricane. Standing on the bed of the heavy truck, Rin Yunche's face was deathly pale. Her only 2 trump cards, Zhang Shan and the 6th chief, the ones who were absolutely loyal, had been killed right before her eyes. She immediately screamed at the top of her lungs, calling for the entire Berserker Alliance to open fire, declaring that Chang Shinkai was no longer their leader. But all he saw were hesitant glances. The district chiefs and ability users watched the blood-soaked Chang Shinkai, but no one dared to pull the trigger. On the other side, the Poison Master was pinned down by a level 2 mutant zombie inside a building, completely unable to break free. Watching the scene, Rin Yunch's face turned as cold as ash. She pushed the soldier off the truck and stepped forward herself. I know you still have a trump card, but it takes time to set up. Chang Shunkai looked at her calm face, his own expression twisting into something hideous. He wanted to see her on her knees begging, not this cold, stubborn resilience. Killing a woman like this wouldn't give him any vengeful satisfaction. No, I can't let you off that easily. He burst into a wild laugh, as if remembering something. That's right, you still have an older sister. His eyes flashed with a murderous light. He said he would capture her sister, slaughter everyone in Zhonghai, and make her listen to their agonizing screams. He laughed, saying that would make him very happy. Then he declared he was going to find them right now, and Rin Yunsha had to come along. At this, Rin Yuncha's expression finally shifted. I could clearly see a flicker of panic in her eyes. She understood better than anyone that Chang Shunkai had gone completely insane, becoming far more brutal than before. Her plant spores were useless now that he was on guard. She turned her head toward the ability users and district chiefs and let out a long breath. At the end of Dongqing Street, the Berserker Alliance warriors were using guns and machetes, desperately trying to hold back the zombie horde. But in Chang Shinkai's mind, there was only one thought: torturing Rin Yunsha. Many were already thinking of deserting. No one cared about anyone else's life. They were here for resources, not to die. Suddenly, Rin Yunsha, lying on the ground, summoned all her strength and screamed toward the back. Third District Chief. Hurry, kill Chang Shunkai for me. The third district chief had been leading his men and hiding at the rear, preparing to slip away. In this situation, going back meant a chance to seize control of the alliance or at least take the resources. He never cared about the lives of the commoners. But he didn't expect to be called out at this exact moment. He cursed under his breath as Chang Shunkai whipped his head around, his blood-red eyes locking onto him. The third district chief was a handsome young man, but the moment their eyes met, his heart nearly stopped. You plan to betray me too? A surging murderous aura erupted from Chang Shunkai. He hurriedly denied it, saying Rin Yunsha was talking nonsense, but he froze when he saw a pink mushroom sprouting from his hand. Plant spores. The smile on Chang Shinkai's face vanished instantly. He narrowed his eyes for a closer look and realized that the ability users behind the third district chief, along with all his subordinates, had the same pale pink mushrooms growing on them. Are they all under her control? His voice was hoarse. Then die, all of you. Chang Shinkai's eyes were bloodshot, his veins bulging like crawling worms. Both of his personalities had awakened, leaving his mind in total chaos. In his twisted perception, anyone with a plant spore was a traitor. He reached out and grabbed a nearby warrior. A freezing chill exploded, and the man was instantly turned into an ice statue. After the kill, he continued to glare at the third district chief with a gloomy gaze. The third district chief trembled. He knew he wasn't being controlled, but he also understood that Chang Shunkai was no longer listening to any explanations anymore. The thought had barely crossed his mind when a pair of wings sprouted from his back. He flapped them hard, desperately soaring into the air. Chang Shunkai narrowed his eyes and swung his hand, unleashing a terrifying burst of magnetic force. Dozens of steel bars were ripped from the ruins, whistling through the air as they pierced straight through the third district chief's body. A wretched scream echoed through the air as his body crashed heavily to the ground. Chang Shunkai charged into the Berserker Alliance warriors, his eyes blood-red like a starving, crazed wolf. He only targeted those with mushrooms, manipulating magnetic fields while letting a freezing frost cover his entire body. Every step he took was like a god of war sowing death, causing the Berserker Alliance's formation to shatter instantly. Boss Chang has gone mad. We can't just stand here and wait to die. Kill him. Kill Chang Shunkai. Zombies were rushing in, and frantic screams filled the air. The scene was pure chaos. The warriors who were holding guns and machetes, trying to set up a defense with barbed wire, broke formation because of the turmoil behind them. A leading mutant zombie immediately seized the opportunity, lunging forward to flip a jeep blocking the way before biting down on a warrior's neck. Blood sprayed amidst the screams. With just 1 point of failure, the Berserker Alliance's defense line collapsed like a house of cards. Zombies flooded in like a tide. Warriors fell, torn apart. Gunshots, roars, and agonizing cries blended together. Blood flowed everywhere. It was nothing short of hell. "Where are you, sister?" Witnessing this, Rin Yunxia's gaze dimmed, her gray eyes filled with a bottomless sorrow. At the same time, on a deserted road, a jeep was speeding along. The warriors in the car grumbled as they drove, saying they didn't understand why Rin Yunxia valued those outsiders so much that she made them protect them. They guessed those people were likely dead. There was no shortage of zombies here. A flimsy little minibus wouldn't stand a chance. "They're just asking for death. We'll just do a quick search and head back to report." Captain Lu sat in the front, his face gloomy. His severed arm was still seeping blood. He was full of resentment, but didn't dare speak up. He knew Rin Yunxia's influence in the Berserker Alliance, and now she was even siding with Chang Shenkai. An ear-piercing cat screech suddenly tore through the air, making everyone's eardrums throb with pain. Captain Lu immediately breaks into a cold sweat. Just from the sound, he knows a mutant beast has appeared. If he were at full strength, he would have dared to face it. But now, with one arm gone and his powers drained from the previous battle, he has no confidence left. Just as the thought crosses his mind, a massive mutant stray cat lunges from the end of the narrow alley, charging straight at them. "Turn around now," Captain Lu screams in a panic. One swipe is all it would take to kill them all. Their only choice is to run. Just as the car is about to turn, the roar of an engine thunders from the end of the road. Everyone's eyes widen. Behind the mutant cat, an old, beat-up minibus is hot on its heels, as if hunting it down. It isn't the car that's fleeing, it's the cat. It's running in a panic, howling in pain. This mouse-chasing cat scene leaves Captain Lu and the others stunned. They had seen this cat tear through armored vehicles with their own eyes, yet here it was, being forced to flee. Before one of the soldiers can even finish his sentence, the minibus suddenly accelerates, rushing forward like a gale. Boom! A heavy impact rings out. The mutant cat is sent flying, slammed flat against a street wall. Dust clouds the air. Immediately after, a mechanical arm hisses as it extends, dragging the monster's carcass off the wall. I jump out of the car and tell Zero we finally got it. The mutant plant seed is inside the cat's belly. Zero nods and pulls the carcass aside to begin the dissection. We had already found 4 mutant plants that secreted active metallic skin, and we discovered they all grew from the corpses or stomachs of mutant beasts. This cat was our final target. Thank goodness. We finally found you. Miss Rin sent us out to find you and bring you back. Snapping back to his senses, Captain Lu rushes over to speak to me. His eyes keep darting toward the minibus, his heart racing. A vehicle that can accelerate and ram a mutant cat to death is definitely no ordinary machine. I pause for a moment. Rin Yunxia? Yes, Rin Yunxia herself. Captain Lu nods repeatedly. I give a flat response. I see. That was thoughtful of her. Sending people to find me in a dangerous forbidden zone like this. She says she's looking for me, but she's really looking for Rin Xiyu. Still, the gesture is worth noting. I know I've gathered everything I need. Besides, Rin Yunxia detected extremely strong psychic fluctuations in several places. Clearly, powerful mutant zombies are lurking nearby. I have no intention of continuing to take risks. Safety comes first. All right, I'll open the comms and let Miss Rin know you're alive. She'll be thrilled. Captain Lu hurriedly pulls out his communicator. But as soon as he turns it on, his face pales instantly. Overlapping screams of agony erupt from the device. Chang Shenkai has gone mad. Kill him. Run. There are more and more zombies. Rin Yunxia, I'll slaughter everyone you control. Then I'll take my time torturing you. That last voice makes my heart sink. Chang Shenkai. Standing beside me, Rin Xiu bites her lip hard, her breathing ragged. Brother Jiang, this is bad. Chang Shenkai's other personality must have retaken control of his body. Her sister is in danger. Despite their differences, she has never stopped caring for her. She just doesn't say it out loud. Hearing this news, she completely loses her composure, her eyes pleading as she looks to me. Get in the car. We're heading back now. I decide firmly, gripping Shiyu's hand. My hand holds her cold, trembling one. Don't worry, I've got you. From the screams and the sounds of tearing flesh over the radio, I know the Gongzhan Alliance has fallen into chaos. Between hitting a massive zombie horde and Chang Shunkai going insane at the same time, their defensive line has definitely collapsed. Virum. The minibus engine roars, racing madly toward Dongqing Road. Captain Lu's jeep hurries to keep up. As they reach the edge of the road, his expression darkens completely. Before them is a bloody hellscape. Thick swarms of zombies are blocking the entrance to the street. Further ahead, the defensive line is shattered. Zombies are tearing the Alliance soldiers apart. People are falling one after another. Captain Jiang, maybe we should take a detour? Captain Lu suggests, his voice trembling. He knows charging into this horde is suicide. Even a tank wouldn't dare. Right then, the engine of the minibus beside him roars even louder. A V-shaped metal plow, gleaming with a cold light, appears at the front of the vehicle. The minibus suddenly accelerates, charging straight into the zombie horde. Captain Lu, they're on a suicide mission, one soldier exclaims. Before the words can even leave his mouth, the scene before them strikes everyone dumb. The minibus tears into the zombies like a prehistoric beast, crushing everything in its path. Zombies are ground to pulp or tossed high into the air. The vehicle carves a bloody path right through the undead tide. Sitting in the jeep, Captain Lu's jaw drops. The speed, the impact force, and the durability of that hull are far beyond imagination. After such a violent charge, the car doesn't have a single scratch. See that, Ren Yunxia? Are you in despair yet? Chang Xinkai stands in the middle of the battlefield, surrounded by fallen soldiers. No one dares to approach him. A few mindless zombies rush him, only to be instantly frozen solid. Ren Yunxia lies on the ground, her legs locked in ice. She can't move at all, her eyes filled with despair. She doesn't say a word in response to his boasting. Answer me. Talk to me. Chang Shunkai bellows, grabbing her throat and lifting her up. At that exact moment, the ear-piercing screech of tires skidding on the pavement rings out. A life-or-death instinct sends goosebumps crawling all over his body. He whips around, staring intently at the approaching minibus. His magnetic powers surge violently, the air around him seemingly warping. Die! Old cars in the wreckage are violently ripped up as if lifted by invisible giant hands, then hurled straight at the minibus. At this moment, Ren Yunxia also realizes the vehicle charging toward them belongs to her sister and our group. Her heart tightens. Sister. She closes her eyes tight, unable to watch. At this speed, if the minibus slammed into that row of old cars, even a tank would be crushed to pieces. The people inside definitely wouldn't survive. The surrounding Guangzhou Alliance espers hastily backed away, afraid of getting caught in the crossfire. Boom, boom, boom. The collisions sounded like thunder, sending shattered metal flying everywhere. A few tires rolled over and stopped near Ren Yunxia, but the engine noise didn't die down. It roared even more fiercely. The screech of tires grinding against the road was ear-piercingly loud. Huh. Ren Yunxia's eyes widened, and a look of joy immediately washed over her face. She saw the minibus still charging forward. The windshield was only slightly cracked, and the body of the vehicle seemed to have taken no serious damage. The minibus charged forward like a prehistoric beast. Its V-shaped front bumper looked imposing, as if it could crush anything in its path. In just a few short seconds, it arrived right in front of Chang Shunkai. Chang Shunkai stared in shock, completely unable to believe the sight before him. How could a mere minibus be this sturdy? He hastily raised his right hand. Countless metal shards and iron scraps in the vicinity immediately levitated, and a powerful magnetic field slammed straight into the bus. He intended to directly magnetize all the metal in the vehicle, turning it into a chaotic pile of scrap iron. But the moment his magnetic field touched the vehicle's body, his heart sank. Why isn't it magnetizing immediately? For the first time, a flash of panic appeared in Chang Shinkai's eyes. He had been absolutely certain that a vehicle body containing so much iron would be easily controlled, but he never expected this to be no ordinary minibus. The body was constructed from a massive amount of rare metal alloys, making it extremely difficult to magnetize, and it had many non-conductive parts. The minibus didn't slow down at all, still charging at a frantic speed. Bam! Chang Shinkai let out an agonized scream. His entire body was sent flying by the terrifying impact, hurtling dozens of meters away before smashing into the wall of a building and disappearing inside. I glanced at the massive crack in the wall, then steered the vehicle to a stop right next to Ren Yunche. Get in. Hurry. I opened the door and pulled her up. Thank you. Having just narrowly escaped death, Ren Yunche looked up at me, her eyes full of shock. This man, his squad, and this vehicle, they had completely exceeded all her expectations. She had thought she was definitely going to die, but she never expected the one sent flying would be Chang Shinkai. I didn't think much of it. I had promised Rin Shiyu I'd save her sister, so I had to follow through. I felt quite a bit of relief myself. As long as we left the restricted zone, everything would be fine. But right at that moment, an agonized scream echoed from the building Chang Shinkai had just crashed into. I turned to look and saw a figure clutching his head, staggering out of the crack like a drunkard. It was Chang Shinkai. His face was twisted in agony, his entire body covered in blood. I don't want to die. I don't want to disappear. He howled in despair. His voice shifted between Chang Jieshan's and his own, the two voices intertwining in a chilling, bone-deep groan. He's still not dead. I was startled. I had just activated the ramming mode. Even a mutated stray cat would have been crushed to a pulp. Could his endurance be even greater than a mutated creature's? Some of the Guangzhou Alliance espers standing nearby also revealed looks of despair. This madman still isn't dead. What the hell is he now? Seeing Chang Shinkai writhing on the ground, a sense of unease welled up inside me. I immediately turned to ask Rin Shiyu. She shook her head, her voice dropping low. His consciousness is extremely unstable. That collision just now probably shattered both of his personalities. He's no longer Chang Shinkai, nor is he Chang Jieshan anymore. A new mental consciousness has formed, and its mental waves are incredibly strong. Hearing this, my heart grew heavy. Through Shiyu's mental vision, I could see Chang Shinkai's mental power erupting violently. Right before our eyes, black mist began pouring out of his mouth, nose, and ears. Looking closely, it wasn't mist, but countless pitch-black spores. They rapidly spread out, invading the weeds and the royal poinciana trees along the road. Chang Shinkai's body swelled up, his muscles bulging like steel, thick veins popping out, pumping thick black blood. Then he opened his eyes and stared coldly straight at me. Those eyes were incredibly bizarre. Inside the pitch-black pupils, a smaller pair of glowing red, sinister pupils had appeared. Double pupils. I furrowed my brow, the premonition of danger growing clearer by the second. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the roof of the bus. A massive tree trunk whipped down like a lash. The minibus shook violently, letting out an ear-piercing screech. Warning: minibus alloy shell damaged. Damage level: 2%. Warning: bulletproof tires damaged. A panoramic view of the vehicle immediately popped into my mind. The weeds on the ground seemed to come alive, turning into incredibly tough steel-like whips that tightly entangled the wheels. Although the massive kinetic energy crushed the vines, the process itself was damaging the tires. Not only that, but the surrounding poinciana trees also began to move, their trunks swinging wildly, attacking indiscriminately. Bam! 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 Several Guangzhou Alliance members couldn't dodge in time and were smashed into a bloody pulp by the trunks. Compared to humans, zombies reacted slower and had lower intelligence. Even with strong combat instincts, they couldn't anticipate attacks from plants. Many zombies had their heads smashed open on the spot. But it didn't stop there. Bizarre vines dropped down, piercing straight into the bodies of some Guangzhou Alliance fighters, draining their blood dry as their agonizing screams echoed endlessly. The already chaotic scene descended into absolute pandemonium. I watched those black spores spread everywhere, and a thought immediately flashed through my mind. Plant manipulation. No, this ability was even stronger than Yangfeng's. Those black spores could clearly manipulate plants, and the moment they merged, they drove the plants into a frenzy, making them many times tougher and more aggressive. Was this Chang Shinkai's current ability? Rin Yunche stood in the bus, watching the poinciana trees and blood-sucking vines frantically attacking everything. Her face was filled with panic as she immediately warned the scurrying squad to retreat. She said Chang Shinkai had likely fused her ability with that metal tree. and this new power far surpassed her own Esper abilities. Not only could he control them, but he could also completely mutate the plants. He had become a monster. I didn't reply, keeping my eyes fixed on Chang Shinkai. I confirmed one thing in my heart. He had evolved. He was already an extremely powerful Esper. This time, with the fusion of his personalities, it was clearly a complete evolution. Metal combined with mutated plants. I didn't know where the limits of his power lay, but he was definitely extremely dangerous. As I stared straight at him, Chang Shinkai's bizarre eyes flashed with a sinister light, piercing through the windshield as if looking right into the bus. His voice rang out shrilly, sounding as if he were speaking right next to my ear, making my eardrums vibrate. He said there were quite a few beauties in the bus, but it was a pity that everyone from Zhonghai would have to die here today. My heart sank. He could see inside the bus. Not just his strength, but his perception and vision had completely transcended that of a normal human. Right at that moment, the Starbug's voice echoed in my mind, reporting the detection of heterogeneous active metal energy. It could be used to nourish the mutated plant seeds I had kept. That energy source was Chang Shinkai. Bam! The surrounding poinciana trees launched another attack. Massive roots burst from the ground, swinging the tree trunks straight at the minibus. My eyes turned ice cold. I gave the order to charge. The minibus didn't back down. Instead, it accelerated, charging straight ahead, continuously dodging the overhead whips, and boom, barreled straight toward Chang Shinkai. Rin Yunche sat in the bus, her heart pounding, unable to stop herself from looking at me. She didn't understand why I chose a head-on attack instead of retreating. But right then, Rin Shiyu grabbed her hand and softly said, "It's going to be okay." There was no fear in Shiyu's eyes, only absolute trust. Rin Yunche realized that it wasn't just Shiyu. Every member of the Shuriying squad in the bus felt the same way. I stared intently at Chang Shinkai. He wanted to kill me, and I wanted his life too. On Dongqing Street, the Guangzhou Alliance members scattered in panic to dodge the blood-sucking vines and giant poinciana trees, but then everyone was drawn by the ferocious roar of an engine. They saw the minibus charging like a madman toward Chang Shinkai. Many were dumbfounded. That was an evolved Chang Shinkai. Yet this vehicle wasn't running away. It dared to attack. But in just a moment, they realized this minibus was absolutely extraordinary. Its bulky body moved with terrifying agility, precisely dodging every smash from the giant tree trunks, leaving behind a road riddled with deep craters. Even in that situation, it continued to charge straight at its target. Chang Shinkai's expression changed. Even though a new consciousness had formed, the pain from the previous collision hadn't faded. He reacted instantly. A massive amount of tree roots burst from the ground, crisscrossing in front of him to form a soaking wet root wall that blocked the entire street. It didn't stop there. The wall rapidly froze over, turning into an icewood wall as hard as steel. Seeing this, many people gasped in horror. The roots were terrifying enough, but now they were frozen solid? It was no different from a steel wall. But the minibus still didn't slow down. The moment before impact, the engine roared furiously. The vehicle's body began to elongate, the chassis transforming, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a heavy-duty semi-truck. Rin Yunch's eyes widened in shock, speechless. The Transformers movies she watched as a kid suddenly flashed through her mind. I saw it clearly. Chang Shinkai's face instantly shifted to pure panic. Bam! The heavy-duty truck slammed straight into the icewood wall. A deafening explosion rang out, cracking the walls of the buildings on both sides. The wall shattered in an instant. Amidst the debris flying everywhere, Chang Shinkai was rammed into the air. A dry crack of breaking bones echoed, sending a chill down the spine of anyone who heard it, as if they were the ones being hit. He was hit so hard, he looked like a piece of flying trash. Even though his post-evolution body had defenses akin to steel, even steel couldn't withstand the ramming of a heavy-duty truck. Chang Shinkai crashed to the ground, his entire body covered in blood, his arms and ribs shattered, but he still wasn't dead. Amidst the rumbling, the truck quickly transformed back into a minibus. Two giant mechanical arms extended out, grabbing him tightly. Like playing with a toy, the mechanical arms swung violently, smashing him into walls, into the ground, against iron frames, anything hard enough. Every smash produced a dull thud that made listeners shudder. Right after, a pitch-black metal nozzle extended from the minibus, aiming straight at Chang Shunkai as he was tossed in midair. Scorching flames spewed out in an instant. The vines were immediately reduced to ash, while Chang Shunkai turned into a fireball rolling across the ground. Is he dead? Seeing Chang Shunkai burn to a crisp, Rin Yunshe couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. But the very next second, a tragic scream rang out, and a bloody body was violently thrown out from the building on the right, landing with a thud right in front of the minibus. Poison Master, Rin Yunshe cried out in horror. I had already spotted the level 2 mutated zombie standing on the roof of the high-rise, its cold eyes locked onto this place. My goal was achieved. I had collected enough mutated plants, and the biggest threat, Chang Shunkai, had been eliminated. There was no need to drag this out. Let's go? I made the decision immediately. Right then, the star bug chimed in my head, announcing that it had absorbed and stored the heterogeneous active metal energy from Chang Shunkai. Immediately after, the level 2 mutated zombie charged straight into the crowd of Guangzhou Alliance fighters. Like a tiger among sheep, its steel-hard body and terrifying speed turned the slaughter into a one-sided massacre. Dozens of fighters fled in panic. Some were caught and torn apart, while others jumped into jeeps and trucks, desperately speeding past both sides of the minibus toward the breach in the high wall. Seeing this, all the members of the Shuriying squad understood that after this battle, the Guangzhou Alliance was effectively destroyed. Rin Yunshe quietly looked away from Poison Master's corpse, then suddenly turned to me. Biting her lip, she said that if I could help hold off the zombie horde, all the golden flowers she had that secreted active metal would be mine. I understood what she meant, but I calmly replied that she had already paid her fee. Rin Yunshe froze for a moment, then firmly shook her head, saying it was a token of gratitude for bringing her sister to safety. I didn't say anything more. I only agreed for Shiyu's sake. A jeep sped past the bus. Someone inside asked Captain Liu in shock why these outsiders weren't running. Captain Liu, who only had one arm left, looked at the minibus, speechless. The sight of that vehicle charging into the zombie horde would probably haunt him for the rest of his life. The next moment, he was shocked to see something resembling a cannon barrel appear on the side of the minibus. With a deafening boom, a blast of white gas tore through the air, wiping out the surging zombies. Even the level 2 mutated zombie was hit, half of its body caving in. Right then, Zhang Hai's rugged face popped out of the window. He laughed heartily, roared, and threw a lit explosive straight into the middle of the zombie horde. Boom! A massive explosion echoed, blowing over a dozen zombies to pieces. The people in the jeep dropped their jaws, forgetting to even run, unable to believe this was just a minibus. I had also climbed up to the combat cabin, holding a sniper rifle. Under Rin Yunch's shocked gaze, every shot I fired accurately blew off a zombie's head. Combined with Yang Tianzhao and Zhang Hai continuously throwing explosives, the firepower pouring out of this minibus sent chills down people's spines. The level 2 mutated zombie hiding in the building glared at the bus with furious eyes. But after being severely injured by the air cannon and suppressed by my sniper fire, it could only growl in helpless rage. Only when the last fighters of the Guangzhou Alliance escaped did the minibus rumble out of the restricted zone. Inside the vehicle, Rin Yunch's emotions still hadn't settled. The terrifying firepower of the minibus and my sniping skills had completely shattered her understanding. Before entering the restricted zone, she had said she would protect the Shuriying squad. But in the end, it was her squad that survived thanks to this vehicle. The minibus stopped in front of the breach in the high wall. The level 2 mutated zombie behind us only roared a few times, not daring to give chase. Rin Yunshe took out the 4 golden flowers from the cultivation pot and handed them to me, saying I only needed the active metal, and she didn't know how to cultivate them anyway. The 4 flowers continuously dripped tiny beads of active metal, which held immense value in Banju City. The way she addressed me had also changed. I pondered for a moment, then nodded and accepted them. With these, I now had a total of 8 golden flowers capable of secreting active metal. Besides that, the mutated plant seeds from the belly of the mutated stray cat and the mutated thorny vines made me very satisfied with this haul. Outside the minibus, Many Guangzhou Alliance members were still in shock. They looked at the vehicle with awe and curiosity, but no one dared to approach. Only when Rin Yunche stepped out did the crowd gather around her. I didn't know what she said, but the people who were panicking just moments ago had calmed down significantly, and their eyes held a hint of respect when looking at her. My eyes flickered. This woman was truly not simple. Rin Xiu sighed softly. Having a sister like that, she didn't know whether to be happy or worried. Brother Jiang, there's a problem with Zhu Ying's body. I had just put away the sniper rifle and was about to check the mobile base's damage levels when Li Yusin walked over. My heart sank. With her medical esper abilities, she could handle any normal issue. This was the first time I had heard her sound so anxious. I immediately hurried over to Zhu Ying's bed. She lay still on the mattress, her face pale, her limbs and muscles twitching very slightly. I held her hand. It was cold and clammy. The feeling brought me back to that heavy rain years ago. She had a high fever, and I carried her on my back through the rain to the hospital. Her hand had felt exactly as cold then as it did now. Li Yusin spoke in a low voice, saying that Zhu Ying's body had shown signs of mutation earlier. But the situation had been too critical at the time, so she hadn't had the chance to mention it. Upon examination, the mutated cells in Zhu Ying's body had become extremely unstable. Some cells had grown much stronger, but others had weakened significantly. The polarization between the strong and weak cells was worsening, leading to adverse reactions in her body. She guessed Zhu Ying wouldn't wake up anytime soon. I listened in silence, not blaming her. In the restricted zone, even a moment of distraction could cost you your life. My mind raced. Just cell mutation? The image of Chang Xinkai's evolution flashed through my mind. Over the past few days, Zhu Ying had been constantly eating mutated creature meat. Her esper abilities had grown much stronger, approaching the threshold of evolution. After consuming the evolution crystal, she fell into a deep sleep. At the time, Li Yusin checked on her and assumed she was evolving, so she didn't disturb her. But she didn't expect a new complication to arise in her body while she slept. I guessed these cells were entering a critical stage of the evolution process. In this situation, I think we should continue supplementing her energy, Li Yusin suggested. I nodded. The only thing that could rapidly replenish an esper's energy was an evolution crystal. I still had 3 level 1 mutated crystals I had collected earlier, enough to synthesize an evolution crystal. I sat in the driver's seat, opened the metal tray next to the control panel, and placed the 3 crystals inside. The energy lab booted up, and the Starbug's steady voice rang out. Not long after, 3 evolution crystals appeared in my hand. I carefully placed one into Zhu Ying's mouth. Under Rin Yunch's arrangements, the minibus entered the Guangzhou Alliance's safe zone. Day and night, I sat by Zhu Ying's side. What reassured me was that after absorbing the evolution crystal, the weak cells in her body were recharged, but she still hadn't woken up. The moon hung like a sickle. In the quiet courtyard where Rin Yunche lived, a campfire crackled. Zero and Zhang Hai were roasting mutated meat, the savory aroma filling the air. I had just finished eating when I saw Li Yusin step out of the vehicle, looking exhausted. She had just done a full checkup on Zhu Ying. I asked about the situation. Li Yusin said Zhu Ying's internal organs and nervous system were fine. Her voice was hoarse from exhaustion and guilt. She had barely slept for a day and a night, constantly using her esper abilities. She was exhausted, yet still couldn't find the cause of Zhu Ying's coma. I gritted my teeth, suddenly thinking how great it would be if Chang Xinkai were still alive. An esper who had undergone a second evolution would definitely understand this state better, but the only one I knew was dead. Right then, Rin Yunche stepped out from the shadows of the vines, followed by 2 Guangzhou Alliance district leaders looking respectful. In her hand was a radio. Amidst the static, she said she had intercepted and decoded several broadcasts. She learned that the Kaiyuan Safe Island was a massive safe zone, many times larger than Zhonghai. Though the journey was far, there were definitely extremely powerful human espers there, along with large hospitals and top-tier medical experts. She looked at me and said, "That place might be able to save your sister." Kaiyuan Safe Island? I was slightly taken aback. This was the first time I had heard of this safe island. Even though I had the mobile base, ever since the apocalypse broke out, almost all communication networks had been paralyzed, cutting off a lot of outside information. I only knew of a few scattered human-safe islands. In the apocalyptic era, information became an incredibly precious resource. Because of this, there were elite teams that made a living selling intel. That's right, it's the Kayuan Safe Island. I've heard my grandfather mention it. He has a few professor friends there. It really is a major human safe zone. When the apocalypse first started, government and military agencies from neighboring cities all relocated there. Before, the hospital affiliated with Kayuan Medical University was famous nationwide. It was a top-tier hospital, ranked in the top 10. Besides that, Kayuan also has the country's most prestigious human pathological genetics research center. If we can get there, the chances of saving Zhu Ying will be very high. Li Yusin slowly recalled the information she knew. These words almost completely wiped away any hesitation in my heart. But if you really want to go there, I have to warn you, the environment at Kayuan Safe Island is very complex. I'll write down all the information I know in a notebook and give it to you, Rin Yinche said in a low voice, her eyes unconsciously drifting toward Rin Shiyu. Rin Shiyu felt a pang of sadness. She understood this was the final gesture of care her sister was offering her. The two sisters had chosen different paths, and Rin Yinche wouldn't be coming with us. While we were still talking, the black radio in Rin Yunche's hand suddenly let out a burst of static. The palm-sized device was full of noise, and the news it picked up was fragmented due to the poor signal. Suddenly, an ear-piercing screech of interference rang out. Rin Yinche frowned and adjusted it a few times until the audio gradually became clearer. A warm, emotional female voice broadcasted from the radio. We interrupt for an important broadcast. Listeners, it is currently 10:30 a.m. on December 25th. The armored convoy carrying scientists from the collapsed Zhonghai zone has arrived safely at Kayuan Island. We would like to pay tribute to the soldiers and civilians who fought at the Zhonghai Safe Island. It is thanks to their perseverance and efforts that the scientists were safely evacuated before the beast tide. Although the Zhonghai Safe Island has fallen, humanity will not yield to the mutated beasts and zombies. We must stand united. Zhonghai Safe Island had fallen. The scientists had been evacuated to Kayuan. Hearing this news, I couldn't believe my ears. This was the first time I was hearing about this. The news was too massive, too shocking. Images of those giant reinforced concrete walls, like black dragons mounted with heavy artillery and machine guns, flashed through my mind. A place with such defenses and firepower, protected by thousands of soldiers, was actually overrun by a beast tide? A chill ran down my spine. I didn't even dare to imagine the scale of that beast tide. Zhang Hai stood frozen in place, a piece of roasted meat still in his mouth, completely petrified. Safe islands were once seen as the ultimate symbol of humanity's strength and shelter. But if even a place like that was defeated by mutated beasts, then where was it still safe? He unconsciously looked at the minibus parked quietly in the courtyard. Perhaps that was the safest place he could think of right now. Zhang Hai silently thanked me for taking him into the squad. When did the Zhonghai Safe Island fall? A voice sounded behind me. Li Yusin bit her lip. Though she tried to stay calm on the surface, anyone could see she was struggling with her emotions. I don't know either. I hadn't heard about this before. Radio broadcasts are often unstable, the signal is poor, and there are encrypted channels. You don't always catch them right away. Rin Yinche was also full of surprise as she slowly explained. Li Yusin nodded and didn't ask further, but her face had turned pale. Don't worry too much. The broadcast said the scientists were safely evacuated. Your parents and grandfather are definitely fine. I spoke up to comfort her. Besides, we're heading to Kayuan anyway. You'll see them. Yeah, if they said that, they must be fine. Li Yusin's voice trembled slightly. Even so, until she saw her family with her own eyes, the anxiety in her heart lingered like a dark cloud that refused to dissipate. Relax, I gently patted her shoulder. We'll reach Kayuan soon. My words were simple, but the warmth from my hand helped her gradually calm down. Her eyes softly shifted to me. The once naive classmate had now become a steadfast man with a resolute gaze. Throughout the journey on the minibus, I had always given her a sense of security. Now, that comfort helped her regain quite a bit of confidence. I said we'd get there quickly, and she believed me. Right then, my eyes were drawn to the radio in Rin Yunche's hand. Do you have any other radios? To me, The outside world was still like a thick veil of night. Information was incredibly scarce. In the future, to develop the mobile base and gather resources, I would have to travel to many places. If I didn't have intel on outside factions, the danger level would increase exponentially. A normal radio couldn't pick up much, because important information usually only existed in safe islands or base cities. Besides the radio, I also needed the decryption intel Rin Yunshe possessed. Rin Yunshe smiled faintly. The Quanzhan Alliance only has this one, but we have technicians who can fix up a few old ones. If you need it, just take this one. However, this type of device relies on broadcasting stations. The signal is only good in places with transmission towers. She didn't hesitate, handing the radio straight to me, then added, I'll write down all the decryption intel in a notebook for you, including cipher frequencies and broadcast schedules. Thank you. Though Rin Yunshe spoke lightly, I fully understood the value of this radio. Rin Yunshe looked at Rin Shiyu with a profound gaze and said, I'm leaving my sister in your hands. There was an underlying meaning in those words that instantly made Rin Shiyu blush. About that, no rush. Could you write down the information about Kaiyuan and the radio now? We might have to leave immediately. Feeling a bit awkward, I quickly changed the subject. Rin Yunshe nodded. All right, wait a moment. Not long after, a few soldiers brought over pen and paper. Rin Yunshe carefully wrote down everything she knew about the Kaiyuan safe island. Not just intel on Kaiyuan, but also the cities and factions along the way. Everything was clearly documented. She also didn't forget to note down the encrypted radio channels and important frequencies. After receiving all the necessary information and restocking water for the journey, I gave Rin Shiyu some time to say goodbye to her sister, then immediately boarded the base vehicle. Right now, I couldn't waste a single minute. The sooner we reached Kaiyuan, the higher the chances of Zhu Ying waking up. Yang Tianzhao stayed behind with the Quanzhan Alliance. With his existing connection to me, Rin Yunshe would treat him well. Thinking of this, Yang Tianzhao was incredibly grateful. He had only acted as a guide, yet unexpectedly exchanged it for such a massive turning point in his life. A moment later, Rin Shiyu stepped onto the base vehicle, her eyes red. Outside the window, only Rin Yunshe stood quietly in the night courtyard, gently waving goodbye as the vehicle pulled away. As soon as Rin Shiyu sat down, I shot her a meaningful glance, which made her face turn bright red as she hurriedly looked away. Virum, the base vehicle roared, speeding into the night. Rin Yunshe stood in place, watching the direction the vehicle disappeared into. She bit her lip, a hint of reluctance flashing in her eyes. Suddenly, she felt something extra in her pocket. When she took it out, she froze, staring at the evolution crystal sparkling like a ruby. An evolution crystal. Not long ago, she herself had secretly slipped a mutated crystal into her sister's pocket in the exact same way. Thinking of this, her heart suddenly softened. No one understood the value of this crystal better than she did. Even Chang Shunkai couldn't have easily taken it by force. Clearly, this was a gift I had asked Rin Shiyu to leave for her. Clear on debts and gratitude, owing nothing. Rin Yunshe's eyes reddened, but she smiled softly. Following a man like that, I can truly rest easy. I hope one day, I'll hear news of you all on the radio. In the darkness, everyone gradually fell asleep. I felt tired too. The energy from the evolution crystal I used earlier was running out. Over the past few days, I had barely had any time to rest. But I still forced myself to stay awake, carefully reviewing all the information Rin Yunshe had written down. Even though she didn't know the exact route to Kaiyuan, I had a national map on my tablet, which was enough to pinpoint the general location. From the Banju area to Kaiyuan was over 1,000 kilometers. Before the apocalypse, taking a train would only take a little over 10 hours. But now, that journey would take at least half a month. After memorizing all the contents on the paper, I shifted my gaze to the radio. This thing was truly too precious. Activate automatic modification mode. Modification target, vehicle-mounted radio. Without hesitation, I placed a level 1 mutated crystal directly into the protruding metal tray in the vehicle. About an hour later, a static sound crackled. A small red box, emitting a faint glow, appeared near the control panel. That was the vehicle-mounted radio. When I opened the Starbugs virtual control panel, each upgrade item clearly appeared in my mind. Vehicle-mounted wireless radio. Satellite signal receiver. Cipher frequencies stored. Signal enhanced. I couldn't hold back a smile. It worked. This thing was like a glimmer of light in the dark night. Moreover, as the base vehicle evolved, this radio could continue to be upgraded, retaining its special features. In the future, I would be able to gather countless pieces of intel from the outside world. That brought me a rare sense of security. In the apocalypse, everyone was like an isolated island. Being able to receive information, or even connect with the outside world, made me feel like I was still living in human society, as if I had returned to the pre-apocalyptic era. Bam! The base vehicle suddenly jolted violently, pulling me out of my brief joy. I looked up. Ahead on the pitch-black highway, a massive crater had appeared. From inside the crater came the sound of countless creatures squirming. Where are we? I was startled. Right then, while steering, I peered into the darkness and quickly spotted a large billboard spanning the highway. On it read, "Welcome to Jining." Jining? I immediately recalled Rin Yunch's specific warning about this city. This was a dead city. There were no living humans left. It was entirely a paradise for zombies. Previously, the Guangzhou Alliance had sent a squad in here to scavenge for supplies, but once they entered the city, not a single person made it out alive. On the map Rin Yunche marked, Jining was an extremely dangerous zone. It was the city's new district, once bustling and prosperous, but now reduced to ruins. Looking through the window into the city, I only saw towering ancient trees swallowing the high rises. The roads leading into the city were devoured by weeds, and on some of the massive tree trunks, pairs of green eyes blinked in the darkness. I frowned. With cities like this, I had absolutely no intention of stopping to scavenge for resources. Just as I was about to keep driving and leave, the bizarre noise from the massive crater ahead suddenly grew clearer. There was definitely something moving inside. Whoosh! A creature darted out of the crater. It wasn't big. It looked like a chubby, round baby panda with long, drooping ears like a rabbit's. Its speed was terrifying, even faster than a cheetah. Its entire body was covered in slime, its mouth still chewing on something as it ran while frantically glancing back. A mutated beast. I immediately went on high alert. Ever since the apocalypse began, the mysterious virus hadn't just turned humans into zombies, but also infected and mutated many wild animals. I had encountered quite a few altered beasts. Some had become fully mutated beasts, while others were only in the process of mutating. They were more ferocious than normal animals, but still weaker than true mutated beasts, like the pack of wild dogs I encountered in Shuangwu County. Behind me, Zero had woken up, a small knife already in her hand. Right at that moment, the ground beneath the little beast's belly suddenly exploded. With a boom, a squishy creature, as thick as an oil barrel and 7 or 8 meters long, burst from the ground. Its entire body was covered in dense, tiny tentacles like countless long legs, moving incredibly fast. It looked exactly like a giant earthworm. My scalp instantly went numb. I suddenly remembered what I had experienced at the Zhonghai Safe Island. Before that place fell, I had also witnessed a beast tide, and old General Zhang had mentioned countless giant earthworms burrowing out from underground. Though it was unclear if they were the main reason the Zhonghai Safe Island fell, their terrifying nature was undeniable. Back then, the Zhonghai Safe Island had paid a massive price just to repel the first wave of the beast tide. And now, these monsters were appearing here. The giant worm opened its massive maw as soon as it surfaced, lunging to swallow the little beast midair. The beast was startled, its tail standing straight up. God knows where it found the strength, but it kicked hard off a piece of shattered rock flying through the air. It swung its body, dodging the worm's jaws by a hair's breadth, vaulted nearly 3 meters into the air, and landed safely on the ground. Immediately after, it bolted straight toward my base vehicle. Before I could even react, I saw it leap onto the windshield, then nimbly scramble up to the roof. Through the base vehicle's panoramic view, I clearly saw it press its round belly flat against the roof, even letting out a burp of pure satisfaction. I was stunned for a moment, thinking to myself that this mutated beast was truly too agile. But its jumping onto the vehicle instantly brought massive trouble. Ahead, the giant worm was madly charging toward the base vehicle. And not just one. 8 or 9 of them burst out of the dirt crater at the same time. All of them aimed straight for the vehicle, their jaws wide open to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. Damn it, we're taking the blame. I frowned in annoyance, but I didn't panic. Immediately, I threw the base vehicle into reverse. The tires screeched piercingly, and from beneath the chassis, a massive metal nozzle extended. A ferocious torrent of flames spewed straight ahead, engulfing the entire pack of giant worms. The terrifying heat cracked the concrete road, while the giant worms writhed madly, slamming into the ground and creating deep craters. But after just a few thrashes, they all stopped moving. When the flames finally died down, only the corpses of 7 or 8 giant worms remained on the ground. What shocked me was that they weren't burned to ash. Their massive bodies remained intact, their outer skin turning a dark yellow, gleaming like metal as they lay motionless. Good thing the fuel flames still work on them. I breathed a sigh of relief. These squishy, earthworm-like creatures had incredibly resilient bodies and a very high tolerance for blunt force impacts. Normal collisions dealt almost no significant damage, but luckily, they were still vulnerable to high temperatures. Brother Jiang, these worms are dead. There are no signs of life left. Zero jumped down from the roof, holding a chubby little beast in her hands. Looking closer now, I saw this little creature resembled a small cat or bear cub, but with long ears like a rabbit. It had a round body and soft fur, looking quite adorable. However, in the apocalypse, appearances meant absolutely nothing. Many creatures looked gentle and cute, but the moment they opened their mouths, they revealed terrifying fangs. The beast's long ears drooped, its 4 legs hung limply, and it showed absolutely no signs of life. I frowned. Just a moment ago, it had been terrifyingly agile. Is it not a mutated beast? Why don't I sense any mutated energy? I couldn't pick up any energy waves from this little animal at all. If it wasn't a mutated beast and didn't have an energy core, then the fuel I just burned was a total waste, because the base vehicle wasn't exactly overflowing with gas. It's not a mutated beast, Zero shook her head with absolute certainty. As an Esper, she was much more sensitive to mutated energy than I was. TCH, bad luck. Throw it away, I ordered coldly. For my squad, aside from mutated beast meat, other types of meat had lost all value. Eating it wouldn't provide any energy. No, it's not dead. It still has mental signs, Rin Xiu suddenly spoke up. Immediately, through our shared mental vision, I saw a dark red mental spark, extremely faint. Sure enough, it's not dead. Mental waves couldn't be faked. In the blink of an eye, that mental spark grew noticeably stronger. Zero, it's playing dead. I shouted a sharp warning. The moment I spoke, the little beast, which had been completely limp, suddenly sprang up. With a powerful leap, it broke free from Zero's grasp and lunged straight for the vehicle window. With a thud, it bounced off, plastered flat against the reinforced bulletproof glass, then slowly slid down. You dare ram your head into bulletproof glass? I chuckled, quickly grabbing it by the tail and dangling it in the air. The intelligence of this little animal truly amazed me. That act of playing dead just now was nearly perfect. No breathing, a heartbeat so faint it was hard to detect, and all bodily functions lowered to the absolute minimum, enough to fool almost anyone. Right then, I noticed a round object, about the size of a beer bottle cap, poking out of the corner of the little beast's mouth. An egg. It emitted a very faint wave of mutated energy. I instantly understood. This was a giant worm egg. The image of the little beast darting out of the crater flashed through my mind. Back then, it was chewing on something. It was these eggs. No wonder those giant worms went so crazy. Clearly, there was a massive nest of eggs underground, and this little beast had sneaked in to steal them. What guts! It actually dared to dive straight into a giant worm nest for a meal. I looked at it, feeling a complex mix of emotions that were hard to put into words. By now, the little beast had completely given up on playing dead. Perhaps it realized it couldn't fool me anymore. Its big, round eyes stared at me warily, its long ears standing straight up. It looked both cautious and pitiful, innocent, yet dangerous. Brother Jiang, this little animal is very special. It might be a type of mutated beast, but its mutated energy isn't obvious. On the contrary, its mental power is very strong, almost like an Esper. Ren Xiu stepped closer, her curious gaze landing on the little beast in my hand. This was the first time she had seen a creature with such bizarre traits. Brother Jiang, those giant worms aren't dead. They're moving. Zhang Hai stood inside the vehicle, looking out the window, his voice full of alarm. I turned my head to look. The giant worms that had just been burned were slowly twitching. Their dark yellow outer skin began to peel off, as if they were molting. Though the process was very slow, it was still an extremely dangerous sign. Pull out now, I ordered in a deep voice. The vitality of these giant worms was too strong. Burned to that extent, and they still weren't completely dead. More importantly, there was a massive nest underground. Who knew how many more were hiding down there? If they had already laid eggs, it was highly likely that a whole swarm of giant worms would erupt in the near future. Handle it, I tossed the little beast to Zero. At first, it tried to struggle, but when it met Zero's cold gaze and saw the gleaming knife in her hand, it immediately tucked its tail, lowered its head obediently, and didn't dare move a muscle. With a roar, the base vehicle accelerated, its body shaking violently as it cleared the crater, then plunged straight into the pitch-black night ahead. The base vehicle passed through the suburban counties of Yangxin and Ganhua, completely leaving the territory of Jining City. Along the way, we came across a few gas stations, but the pumps were all empty, having been drained dry long ago. In the roadside supermarkets, aside from finding a little beer and soda, there were almost no other supplies left. We didn't gather anything of value. I couldn't help but feel frustrated. As time dragged on, scavenging for supplies in the apocalypse was becoming increasingly difficult. Fortunately, back at the Zhonghai Safe Island in Shuangwu County, I had stockpiled enough for a long journey. Brother Jiang, this little animal is really smart. I guess its intelligence is at least on par with a 4 or 5-year-old child. When the base vehicle stopped to rest by a river, Rin Xiu grabbed the little beast by its 2 long ears and held it up in front of me. It's very clever, just like a kid. I named it Luo Luo. What do you think? Luo Luo even understands some of the things Zero and I say. Rin Xiu, usually so cold and aloof, now looked full of excitement, like a vibrant young girl. It seemed cute creatures always had an irresistible charm for girls, and even someone like her was no exception. Luo Luo? The name sounded cute, but this was clearly no ordinary beast. As long as you like it, I smiled faintly. While being held by Rin Xiu, Luo Luo acted obedient, its 4 legs hanging limply, its big round eyes looking at me with a look of resigned fate. But I wasn't fooled at all. Yesterday, it had caused a ruckus all afternoon, trying to break the bulletproof glass to no avail, only giving up when it was too exhausted. Suddenly, Luo Luo licked its lips, its gaze locked onto the floor beneath my feet. Down there was a glass tray covered in a thick layer of black sand, mixed with many rare metal scraps, copper, iron, and even a few pieces of mutated beast meat. Among them, the 8 golden flowers were slowly secreting active metal, while the 5 mutated plant seeds were buried deep in the sand. Based on the information Rin Yunshe left behind, I knew how to cultivate them. These plants didn't just need mutated energy, they also required a massive amount of metal to sustain their growth. Their survival environment was extremely harsh. The heterogeneous energy we had collected earlier was their essential nutrient. Zero, keep an eye on this little animal. Don't let it eat those mutated plants, I ordered coldly. If it were just a normal beast, I would have thrown it out long ago. And if it were a mutated beast, it would eventually become food. But a beast that knew how to play dead and dared to sneak into a giant worm nest to steal eggs was absolutely not simple. Moreover, Zero, Rin Xiu, and Li Yusin all really liked it. Since yesterday, they had been taking turns playing with it. Seeing them happy, I decided to keep it. If it showed any abnormal behavior, Rin Xiu would deal with it immediately. After yesterday's incident, Luo Luo seemed to understand its place and became much more obedient. Brother Jiang, the meat's done. We've got beer too. Sun Kuan called out cheerfully from outside the vehicle. I smiled and nodded. I wasn't much of a beer drinker before, but in the apocalypse, occasionally having a cold beer with mutated meat wasn't bad at all. But the moment I opened the vehicle door, I heard a frantic shout from behind. A small shadow darted past my line of sight, lunging straight for the smoking roasted meat on the fire. Sun Kuan, holding a can of beer, stared wide-eyed as Luo Luo swallowed the piece of meat whole, even chewing up the metal skewer along with it. That's my meat. Leave some for me. I'll fight you for it, you little brat. Sun Kuan jumped up in anger, and Zhang Hai was furious too. The two of them had worked hard roasting meat all afternoon, only for it to be devoured in the blink of an eye. They lunged forward to chase it, but Luo quickly hopped onto the roof of the base vehicle. I don't believe I can't catch you. Sun Kuan climbed up after it, but Luo leaped high into the air, clinging to a nearby tree, sticking its tongue out in mockery. It was a blatant provocation. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan continued their furious pursuit, while Luo nimbly vanished from sight. I just stood there, smiling wryly. Turning to Zero, I saw a rare, faint smile appear on her usually emotionless face. Perhaps no woman could resist the charm of a creature like Luo. I shook my head helplessly. It seemed this meal would have to be postponed. I returned to the base vehicle and checked on Zhu Ying's condition. She was still in a deep sleep. I gently pulled the blanket up to cover her better, then sat in the driver's cabin. After a series of operations, I took out 2 sparkling level 2 mutated cores and placed them in the metal tray. Starbug, open the heterogeneous plant research lab. The cold voice echoed in my mind, confirming that the materials were sufficient and initiating the unlock countdown. 6 days later, Luojia City. A massive snowstorm hit unexpectedly. Gray snow blanketed everything. The entire desolate, withered city looked as if it were submerged in an eternal twilight. Freezing winds from Siberia swept through, causing the giant trees to topple one after another. This damn weather. It really doesn't want anyone to survive. Zhang Hai hugged his gun, leaning against the vehicle window, muttering as he looked at the gray sky. It was freezing outside, but inside the base vehicle, it was warm thanks to the alloy shell and bulletproof glass. Even though we had a climate control system, I decided not to turn it on to save fuel. The squad was used to eating mutated beast meat, so our bodies were much stronger and fully capable of withstanding the harsh weather. Just 2 more days of driving, and we'll reach Heyuan City. I looked at the snow-covered road ahead, the corners of my mouth curling into a faint smile. Luojia Mountain was located to the east of Heyuan City. Over the past few days, the base vehicle had been running almost nonstop, only pausing when we truly needed to rest and eat. We had survived quite a few encounters with zombie hordes, but we managed to escape safely every time without facing any major danger. A journey that should have taken half a month was cut down by nearly half thanks to the base vehicle's speed. Brother Jiang, there's something ahead. Zhang Hai suddenly spoke up, alerting me. I looked in the direction he pointed. At the intersection ahead, 7 or 8 makeshift vehicles were driving over from another road. These vehicles were cobbled together from scrap metal, their doors rattling in the wind. Some even had wooden planks and plastic chairs nailed to the chassis, looking incredibly flimsy. Only the 3 jeeps leading the pack looked like proper vehicles. Though they hadn't been heavily modified, at least their bodies were intact. Through the gaps, I could see they were packed with people. They were emaciated, their faces gaunt. They were clearly ordinary survivors, their faces showing a mix of fear and hope. A convoy like this was heading straight for Heyuan City. Boss, another vehicle just joined us from behind. It's an old, beat-up minibus. Looks like it's falling apart, probably fleeing from Shishan City. In the lead jeep, a heavily tattooed young man observed the old minibus that had just joined the convoy and spoke to the middle-aged man driving. In his eyes, the mud-caked, filthy minibus showed no signs of modification. Aside from being intact, it was exactly the kind of vehicle ordinary survivors would choose, spacious enough to carry supplies, but with weak defenses, making it hard to fend off zombies or mutated beasts. Judging by its appearance, he was certain this vehicle only came from a nearby area and couldn't possibly have traveled from far away. I see it. The middle-aged man wearing sunglasses and a short-sleeved jacket that revealed his solid muscles replied calmly. Even though the temperature was below freezing, he didn't seem to feel the cold at all. With an expressionless face, he continued, Shao Qi, go collect the guide fee. Make sure to explain the situation ahead to them. Pausing for a moment, he added, handle it carefully. Don't scare them. Vehicles like that usually belong to ordinary people. At most, they might have 1 or 2 espers. Refugee convoys like this weren't rare, and the espers among them usually weren't very strong. Better than normal people, but no match for an elite survivor squad. Ling Feng's squad was exactly that, an elite squad that specialized in taking missions from the Heiyuan safe zone and hunting mutated beasts to survive. Boss Ling Feng, you're too kind. In this freezing weather, if it were me, I wouldn't give a damn whether they lived or died. Xiao Qi grumbled, taking the opportunity to flatter him. Behind the sunglasses, Ling Feng's eyes were hard to read, but the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He was clearly very pleased. I casually drove the old minibus at the back of the convoy, but I felt something was off when the vehicles ahead suddenly stopped. The road ahead seemed heavily damaged, leaving only one lane passable. Right then, I saw a tattooed young man jump down from the lead jeep into the falling snow. He was only wearing a t-shirt, his solid muscles exposed, exuding the aura of an esper. He quickly walked over and knocked on the driver's window. I glanced at Rin Shiyu standing nearby. She shook her head slightly, signaling there was no danger. I calmly rolled down the window. What is it? I sat in the vehicle, looking down at the young man and asked. Looking at me, he saw just a 20-something guy. Aside from a calm, somewhat unfathomable gaze, I didn't give off any strong esper energy. Almost instantly, he concluded I was just an ordinary person. But then his eyes landed on the interior of the minibus. His pupils shrank. In the passenger seat sat a beautiful woman in a tight black leather outfit. She had an alluring figure and smooth skin, clearly someone who hadn't suffered much hardship. An ordinary guy with a luxurious vehicle and a beauty by his side? It looked more like he was on vacation than fleeing for his life. He was living better than Xiao Qi was. What annoyed him the most was that I remained seated high up in the driver's seat, not even bothering to step out to talk. As an esper, Xiao Qi had never been treated like this. In my eyes, there was only vigilance, absolutely no fear or respect. Even though he sensed there were espers in the vehicle, just one or two couldn't compare to their elite squad. This concerns your lives. Xiao Qi raised an eyebrow, his voice cold. You guys are heading to the Heiyuan safe zone, right? There was a beast tide recently, and this road is almost completely destroyed. If you want to get through, you have to let us guide you through a shortcut. We're a survivor squad from the Heiyuan safe zone. We can guarantee your safety. Of course, you don't have to follow us. The guide fee is nothing to us, but our boss is kind-hearted, so he sent me to inform you. I furrowed my brow slightly. There was quite a bit of information in those few sentences. So the Heiyuan safe zone had also been attacked by a beast tide. The road ahead was severely damaged, and the situation didn't seem simple at all. As a newcomer, if I tried to navigate on my own, I'd likely run into more trouble. How much is the guide fee? I asked slowly. 10 cans of meat or 10 liters of gas? Xiao Qi replied coldly, deliberately quoting an exorbitant price for the post-apocalyptic era. Around us, the people in the other beat-up refugee vehicles looked at me with sympathetic eyes. Where would anyone find 10 cans of meat these days? He was clearly making things difficult. How about this? I casually handed out a charred skewer of meat. It was the mutated beast meat Zhang Hai had roasted earlier, but accidentally burned. I had intended to give it to Luo Luo, but that cunning little beast refused to eat it. Even though it was charred, mutated beast meat was still far more valuable than canned meat. When the blackened skewer was held out the window, the smell of spices still lingered. Are you messing with me? Xiao Qi frowned, but then he realized it was mutated beast meat. Someone in this wasteland is actually roasting meat with spices. Is that not enough? I frowned, my voice turning cold. If that's not enough, then you're being way too greedy. All right, this is enough. Xiao Qi snapped back to reality, shot me a glare, and took the skewer. He had only intended to make things difficult. Since the other party had offered mutated beast meat, and he remembered Ling Feng's order not to push too hard, he let it go. In his mind, he figured that for the people in this vehicle, that skewer of meat was probably their entire fortune. When Xiao Qi returned to the jeep, Ling Feng noticed the strange look in his eyes. What? Did they refuse to pay? The guide fee meant nothing to his elite squad, but it was the rule. Here, Xiao Qi handed the meat skewer over. Ling Feng looked slightly surprised, then chuckled. I told you not to make things too hard for them, yet you actually took their mutated beast meat. For a group like that, getting a bit of meat isn't easy. He shook his head. I leisurely drove the old minibus, following the convoy onto the shortcut leading to the Heiyuan safe zone, a path only locals knew. Along the way, the massive trees on both sides had been knocked down by the blizzard, uprooted, their bark shredded, as if they had been violently snapped by giant mutated beasts. In some places, deep craters, traces of lairs, and the remnants of fierce battles were exposed. Clearly, this shortcut had also been swept by the beast tide. After a day of travel, the convoy finally emerged from the forest by noon. The sight in the distance left me stunned. Before my eyes was a majestic city standing firm amidst the blizzard. Its cold, gray concrete walls stretched endlessly, leaning against the mountain range, shrouded in the swirling snow. In front of the walls were layers upon layers of barbed wire and steel fences. Behind them, at regular intervals, stood 6-story-high watchtowers with heavy machine guns pointing down. The defenses were incredibly strict. What shocked me even more were the massive concrete smokestacks billowing hot smoke above the city. Amidst the twilight-like scenery of the post-apocalyptic world, several high-rise buildings were actually lit up. That smoke and light indicated two things: the industrial system and the power grid were still functioning. The Hyuan safe zone had electricity, and enough of it to keep the lights on during the day. Seeing these signs of human civilization, my heart fluttered. This place was clearly much larger and more intact than the Zhonghai safe zone. Get the hell out of the way. A brutal shout snapped me back to reality. From the southeast, a much larger convoy was speeding toward us, at least 30 vehicles, led by a modified heavy-duty truck. On the slippery, snow-covered road, the truck drove like a maniac, not slowing down at all. It slammed straight into a refugee vehicle, knocking it aside. A deafening crash rang out as vehicles collided amidst panicked screams. Meanwhile, the heavy-duty truck plowed a long path, heading straight for the outermost quarantine checkpoint of the Hyuan safe zone. The modified heavy truck sped past our Jeep, its window rolling down. A burly man with a cigarette in his mouth and an arrogant mohawk stuck his head out, flipped his middle finger straight at Ling Feng and the convoy, then slammed the gas and sped off. I heard Xiao Qi cursing through gritted teeth in the Jeep, his voice full of fury, saying it was Huang Haihu's pack of bastards. He turned to Ling Feng, his tone bitter, saying they were getting more and more arrogant lately. Ling Feng just narrowed his eyes slightly, a cold glint flashing in his gaze. He replied calmly that they had recently joined Blackwater. It's normal for them to be arrogant. No need to rush. Sooner or later, we'll get a chance to deal with them. Hearing the name Blackwater, Xiao Qi seemed to realize something. His expression changed. He let out a soft chuckle and said no more. A moment later, Ling Feng thoughtfully instructed Xiao Qi, "Take a few guys to the back and check on the people traveling with us. Since we're guiding them, help out if you can." After the heavy truck aggressively cleared the way, the other crewed vehicles followed closely behind. In those vehicles were groups of emaciated, pale refugees. Compared to them, the people traveling with Ling Feng's convoy looked much better. Though malnourished, there was still a glimmer of life in their eyes. The people in Huang Haihu's vehicles were completely different. From young to old, everyone was covered in wounds, their eyes filled with nothing but deep-seated fear. Many of them already had frostbite, huddling in the truck beds, shivering in the biting cold. At the back of the convoy, a few large men wrapped in thick animal skins sat silently keeping watch, holding sharp knives. As the convoy rolled by, agonizing groans echoed from some of the vehicles, sending chills down the spine. The outermost quarantine checkpoint of the Hyuan safe zone had 10 gates, all made of heavy steel doors. Armed soldiers stood guard in front of each one. Vehicles lined up, waiting for their turn to be inspected. Originally, Ling Feng's convoy was supposed to stop at Gate 10, but Huang Haihu's vehicles cut in and took their spot, forcing them to the back of the line. Suppressing his anger, Xiao Qi led 5 or 6 burly men out of their vehicle and ran toward the back of the convoy. The area was now in chaos, with groans of pain echoing everywhere, especially from the vehicle that had been flipped by the truck. Blood spilled from the vehicle, freezing solid in the biting cold the moment it hit the ground, spreading into dark red stains on the ice. The other refugees crawled out one by one, saving each other, quietly helping out, tearing their clothes to bandage wounds, doing whatever they could in their destitute state. Many were so thin they shivered violently, their teeth chattering nonstop. I saw Xiao Qi and his men working together to flip the overturned vehicle back upright, all of them panting heavily. I drove the old minibus up and stopped next to Xiao Qi. I stuck my head out the window and asked if he knew anyone at Quarantine Gate 9, and if there was any way to get into the city sooner to lend a hand. My heart was burning with anxiety. I just wanted to get inside as soon as possible, because my sister was still unconscious in the vehicle. Xiao Qi replied impatiently, asking if I couldn't see everyone lining up, and saying he had no way to help. After speaking, he shot me a glance, his eyes unconsciously drifting to the cold woman sitting next to me. Just her side profile was enough to make him freeze in awe of her beauty. There were still over 30 vehicles ahead of us. I pointed at the convoy that had just cut in line and asked why they didn't have to wait, and if they weren't afraid the quarantine officers would give them trouble. The arrogant heavy truck was now second in line, just waiting for its turn. Xiao Qi let out a mocking laugh, asking what era I thought this was. The quarantine officers didn't care. If you had the strength, you could cut in line. With that, he turned and walked away, probably thinking I was some naive fool who didn't understand the cruelty of the post-apocalyptic world. Where was there any fairness here? Behind him, only a very soft "oh" could be heard. Immediately after, the sudden roar of an engine erupted. A strong gust of wind swept past. I slammed the gas, and the old minibus suddenly shot forward at terrifying speed. It charged straight toward the heavy-duty truck waiting in front of Quarantine Gate 10. At the gate, as the vehicle in front was let in, it was finally Huang Hai's turn. A one-eyed quarantine officer stood blocking the gate, his cold gaze and stern aura making it clear he was not to be trifled with. Despite his arrogance, Huang Haihu had to rein in his pride, carefully jumping out of the vehicle with his lackeys. He smiled obsequiously, tossing a pack of cigarettes to the officer, saying he had just found some good smokes to offer him. In the apocalypse, cigarettes were a luxury item only the elite possessed. Officer Qin didn't refuse, accepting them as his gaze softened slightly. He warned Huang Haihu not to push his luck just because he had Blackwater backing him. Constantly cutting in line would leave a bad impression. His words were strict, but he clearly left him a way out. Huang Haihu chuckled and apologized, making the excuse that his squad was strong, and saving time meant they could contribute more to the safe zone. Just then, he noticed a flash of surprise in Commander Qin's eyes as he looked past him. The roar of an engine tore through the air. Huang Haihu whipped his head around, only to see my battered bus charging forward like a rabid beast. The heavy truck had barely come to a stop when my bus slammed right into it. The truck skidded over 10 meters across the icy snow before losing its balance and flipping over. With a deafening crash, countless supplies spilled out of the truck bed, scattering across the ground along with a few bloody mutant beast carcasses. Several burly men groaned in pain, struggling to crawl out of the overturned truck bed. Huang Hai's eyes bulged. He crushed the cigarette in his hand, let out a furious string of curses, and lunged toward the bus, clearly wanting to tear apart whoever dared to hit him. But the moment he closed in, the driver's side window suddenly rolled down, and a pitch-black gun barrel was pointed straight at his forehead like a lightning bolt. The freezing muzzle pressed against his skin, making him shiver in the sub-zero cold. I clearly saw his pupils shrink. He recognized it as a sniper rifle, and a large-caliber AMR, too at that. A legendary pre-apocalypse firearm. A single bullet was enough to turn a human head into a bloody pulp. I opened the door and stepped out, holding the AMR, too. I took a step forward, and Huang Haihu immediately took a step back, his breathing growing heavy. He roared, declaring himself as Huang Haihu of Blackwater, screaming if I had thought about the consequences of pointing a sniper rifle at him. His mouth was fierce, but his body didn't dare to move an inch. He knew that if I pulled the trigger, he'd die on the spot. Right at that moment, another jeep sped over. Ling Feng stepped out of the car, looked straight at Huang Haihu, and said that we were outsiders who didn't know anything about Blackwater, so talking was useless. Then he turned to me, his tone softening, telling me not to be rash. He said my captain hadn't even spoken yet, and I shouldn't drag the whole squad into unnecessary trouble. He promised that if I spared Huang Hai's life, this guy wouldn't dare cause me any more trouble. As he spoke, Ling Feng shot a quick glance at the bus, clearly wanting the people inside to hear him. Behind him, Xiao Qi and a few other big guys rushed over, weapons drawn, creating a standoff with Huang Haihu's men. Huang Haihu looked back and forth between Ling Feng and me. He was visibly relieved, seemingly assuming we were just a bunch of clueless rookies from out of town. He turned and roared at Ling Feng, calling him a hypocrite, accusing him of trying to use our squad just because he saw we had good guns. He sneered that Ling Feng was trying to suck up to us because we hadn't awakened, but warned that doing so meant crossing him, and sooner or later, he'd deal with Ling Feng. Ling Feng didn't deny it. He had seen our squad's potential the moment he spotted the sniper rifle in my hands. He also understood that we possessed resources far beyond his initial expectations, so he wasn't afraid to confront Huang Haihu, a newcomer to Blackwater, especially since they already had bad blood. At that exact moment, a gunshot rang out. Huang Haihu let out a blood-curdling scream as a massive hole was blown through his left foot, sending blood and flesh flying. No one had time to react. I had already drawn my Type 54 pistol and shattered his foot. I said calmly that I didn't have time for this nonsense. I was in a hurry. The AMR-2 was still aimed right at Huang Haihu's head, while the pistol in my other hand casually swept toward his lackeys. Everyone who met my gaze felt a chill run down their spine. No one dared to move, knowing that a single mistake would get them killed instantly. My voice was still calm, but the murderous intent hidden beneath my words made the air feel suffocating. Huang Haihu looked into my eyes and suddenly felt genuine terror. He had seen that look in the eyes of military commanders, a look that treated human lives like grass, the look of someone who could decide life and death in the blink of an eye. To me, he was absolutely nothing. Right then, the people inside the bus started stepping out one by one. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan held Type 95 submachine guns, with Ying and Zero following closely behind. Especially Rin Xiu. A powerful wave of mental energy radiated from her, silently enveloping the area and suppressing the enemy's minds. The moment they appeared, all the awakened present clearly felt the intense energy radiating from my squad. Even though Ying wasn't an awakened, her cold demeanor, icy gaze, and toned physique still made others sense her hidden strength. We were used to eating mutant beast meat and absorbing high-level evolution crystals, which had visibly boosted our overall strength. Xiao Qi's jaw dropped in shock. He muttered that this squad had way too many awakened, and they were incredibly strong. His own squad only had 3 awakened, yet my squad not only outnumbered them, but also gave off a mental suppression that made him extremely uncomfortable. Clearly, this was an elite survival squad. Zero and the others stood beside me, calling me captain, weapons in hand as they kept a vigilant eye on Huang Haihu's men. Ling Feng and Xiao Qi exchanged looks, so shocked they couldn't even close their mouths. Because the guy they thought was just a regular driver turned out to be the captain of the entire squad. I caught a fleeting look of embarrassment on Ling Feng's face. He must have realized he had completely misjudged me from the start. I moved the gun barrel away from Huang Haihu's forehead, turned to look straight at the one-eyed quarantine officer, and said that we'd like to proceed with the inspection now. Officer Qin stood there, a complex look flashing through his eyes, but from start to finish, he had no intention of intervening. We'll proceed with the inspection. Outsiders who want to enter the Heiyuan safe zone need a guarantor or must pay a corresponding amount of resources. If no one vouches for you, the required resources will be higher. Here's the price list. Officer Qin handed me a price list as he spoke, explaining that the Heiyuan safe zone was heavily guarded, densely populated, and short on resources. To reside in different areas, you needed the corresponding badge, and resources were what you used to exchange for them. Before I could even take a close look, Ling Feng quickly spoke up, clearly having just recovered from his shock. He said he could vouch for us, as they were the Ling Feng squad. Officer Qin gave a cold nod. He obviously recognized Ling Feng's squad. If they were vouching, there wouldn't be an issue. I turned and smiled, thanking Ling Feng. Honestly, I had a pretty good impression of him, even though he had taken a burnt meat skewer from me earlier. Along the way, Ling Feng had carefully led the route, dealt with zombies, and tried his best to keep survivors from getting hurt. Ling Feng gave a faint smile, saying it was nothing, just making friends, then excused himself to return to his squad. After Ling Feng left, I looked down at the price list. There were 5 types of badges, ranked from highest to lowest. A, B, C, D, and E. The A-class badge was the most expensive, requiring 500 caddies of mutant beast meat each. It allowed residents near the Central District, right next to City Hall. The B-class badge required 100 caddies of mutant beast meat. It was an area for the capable or powerful, with good living conditions and close to key facilities. The E-class badge was the cheapest, only costing a few cans of food or some dry rations. But the residential area was impoverished, remote, and lacked amenities. Without hesitation, I said I'd take the B-class badges, then told Zhang Hai to bring out 800 caddies of mutant beast meat. The B-class area was located near the hospital and major trading hubs, which perfectly suited our current situation. Hearing the number, 800 caddies, Ling Feng, who had only taken a few steps, felt his face twitch. That was the equivalent of 1.5 mutant beasts. Yet an outsider squad like ours handed it over so easily, without a second thought. It was an absolute luxury. After handing over the meat, I received the B-class badges and completed the quarantine check, all under the greedy and envious gazes of many onlookers. The bus slowly drove through the gates, leaving Huang Haihu standing there with his bloody foot, his face twisted in pain and fury. As soon as we passed the gates, voices rang out inside the bus. Someone asked me why I didn't just blow Huang Haihu's head off with the sniper rifle. I replied casually that I didn't want to waste a sniper bullet, since we didn't have many left. Those words reached Huang Haihu's ears, making his face twitch uncontrollably. So he only kept his life because I wanted to save a bullet? He must have been feeling both furious and helpless, because an outsider squad like ours was simply too arrogant. So arrogant that even a ruthless thug like him found it hard to swallow. Right after the bus cleared the quarantine gate, Rinxiu gently reminded me in my mind that Officer Qin was a mental awakened. He had tried to probe our thoughts, but since his mental power wasn't as strong as hers, she had blocked him. I frowned slightly and looked back, seeing the one-eyed Officer Qin still standing at the gate. His cold gaze followed our bus, his remaining eye glinting with a strange light amidst the white snow. A mental awakened relegated to guard duty? This Heiyuan safe zone was definitely not simple. In the past, every mental awakened I had met was either a powerful figure or held a very important position. Even if their abilities weren't top tier, they wouldn't be reduced to guarding a gate. This alone proved that the Heiyuan safe zone had no shortage of powerful individuals. After our bus entered, Officer Qin didn't immediately inspect the next vehicle. Instead, he pulled out a notebook and quickly jotted down information about the Shuying squad. Unknown background, vouched for by the Ling Feng squad. 6 awakened members. Captain is a normal human who uses a sniper rifle. Fast reflexes, likely a professional shooter. Exact strength unknown. Other members possess abilities above average. The squad has a female mental awakened with immense mental power. Temporarily rated as a C-class squad, requires further observation. Evaluator, Qin Hong. Once he finished writing, he handed the notebook to a nearby soldier and ordered it to be sent to the Security Bureau immediately. The soldier took the order, saluted, and quickly hurried off. The Heiyuan safe zone was a massive area, teeming with awakened and a complex web of factions. Because of this, security and intelligence were highly prioritized by the military here. Any squad that entered was monitored and evaluated to prevent trouble. As my bus drove deeper inside, I couldn't help but marvel. Compared to the Zhonghai safe zone, this place was much larger. It was the most massive human stronghold I had seen since the apocalypse began. On a mountain over 300 meters high, rows of brand new buildings were neatly laid out. Giant reinforced concrete chimneys continuously belched thick black smoke, giving off a vibe that was both orderly and oppressively heavy. By now, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan had already entered the small house. Zhang Hai muttered as he walked, saying he heard people outside mention something called an exploration permit. With that, you could move freely around the safe zone at night. He insisted we definitely had to get one later. The bus was parked neatly in the small courtyard. Aside from Ing, who stayed in the vehicle, the rest of the Shuying squad had gone inside. The moment we stepped through the door, a wave of warmth hit us. The house was fully equipped with a fridge and an AC unit. Everything was running perfectly, making me even more certain that the Heiyuan safe zone's power grid was still in great shape, or at least hadn't been severely damaged by the apocalypse. While I was looking around, Sun Kuan suddenly ran out of another room, lowering his voice to report that someone was spying on us outside, staring right at our house. I frowned and followed him into the room. Looking out the window, I indeed saw a sneaky figure standing at the edge of the B-class area. My eyesight was much better than Sun Kuan's. With just one glance, I recognized the guy holding the binoculars. It was the heavily tattooed young guy from the Ling Feng squad, Xiao Qi. I thought for a moment, then told Sun Kuan to follow me, while the others stayed put and didn't wander off. Sun Kuan nodded immediately, looking a bit excited. Usually, I'd take Zhang Hai when I went out, so it was finally his turn. I checked my weapons, making sure my rifle and handgun were well hidden, then threw on a thick black trench coat. I had picked this coat up from a clothing store a while back. It looked like a designer brand. But in the apocalypse, no one cared about that. The most important thing was that it was baggy enough to conceal my weapons. Just as I put the coat on, I felt something soft in the large pocket. I looked down and realized it was Luo Luo. It was curled up fast asleep, breathing evenly, letting out soft little snorts from its nose. I thought about it and decided to just bring it along. It wasn't getting in the way, and it looked pretty well behaved. Outside, Xiao Qi was hiding behind a stone wall, keeping an eye on the B-class area while enduring the biting cold. Even as an awakened, he found the harsh weather unbearable. But this was a mission from his boss, and it involved something important, so he had no choice but to do it. Plus, without a B-class badge, he couldn't get inside, so he could only wait out here. He couldn't stop thinking about how gutsy I was to blow Huang Hai's foot off with a single shot. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a pang of admiration, especially when he remembered the beautiful girl standing next to me. A mix of jealousy and curiosity welled up inside him, almost making the cold feel a little more bearable. Right at that moment, Xiao Qi suddenly felt something freezing cold press against the top of his head. The familiar metallic sensation made his entire body stiffen, a chill shooting straight from his tailbone to the crown of his head. I stepped out from behind the stone wall, my voice low and cold as I told him not to move, or Sun Kuan would blow his brains out. Xiao Qi's face went pale. His neck was so stiff he didn't dare turn his head. He only dared to roll his eyes upward, catching sight of Sun Kuan clinging to the stone wall with his legs. Sun Kuan was practically hanging at a 90-degree angle, aiming a rifle right at his head. Xiao Qi immediately threw his hands up in surrender, forcing a bitter smile as he begged us not to scare him like that. He admitted he had been blind to our strength before. He confessed he had been a fool, then quickly added that his boss wanted to make friends with us, which was why he was sent to deliver some very important news. I asked coldly what it was. Xiao Qi turned serious, saying that since we blew off Huang Hai's foot, the Blackwater organization was absolutely furious. They had placed a bounty on our squad at the 5th tunnel, wanting all of us dead. After he finished, he tried to gauge my reaction, but there wasn't a trace of panic in my eyes. I asked him what the 5th tunnel was, completely unbothered by Blackwater's threat of revenge. That was already factored into my plans. Soldiers will stop the enemy. Earth will dam the flood. I was only curious about the name. Xiao Qi explained that the 5th tunnel was located in the Heiyuan Safe Zone's underground sewer system. It was massive and interconnected. It had now become the underground black market for survival squads. Anything the government banned from public trading could be found there. At this point, he shot me a glance and asked if I really wasn't afraid of Blackwater. I looked at him with a bit of surprise and asked if he was terrified of them. Xiao Qi's face stiffened. Admitting he was scared would be too humiliating, so he quickly explained that it wasn't exactly fear. It was just that his boss had backing too. While not as strong as Blackwater, the other side wouldn't dare mess with him easily. Despite his attempt to act tough, his shifty eyes gave him away completely. I casually mentioned that the Blackwater organization seemed to have quite a bit of influence in the Heiyuan Safe Zone. After all, I had heard the Blackwater Club mentioned earlier. Xiao Qi replied that Blackwater was one of the most powerful factions in the 5th tunnel. It was made up of over 20 elite survival squads, so they were definitely a big deal. He tried to act nonchalant, but his awkwardness only made me more interested in this so-called Blackwater organization. Sun Kuan slung his rifle over his shoulder, chuckling as he mocked the awakened out there for thinking they were hot shit. The Blackwater organization hadn't even met our squad yet, but they dared to put a bounty on our heads? They sure had some nerve. Seeing Sun Kuen's fearless, joking attitude, Xiao Qi felt even more frustrated. He felt like these guys had no idea how high the sky was or how deep the earth went. They didn't understand how terrifying black water truly was, and talking to them was pointless. After a moment of silence, Xiao Qi changed his tone, looking at me earnestly as he said we probably came to the Heiyuan safe zone looking for a long-term shelter. There weren't many safe places left out there, and the situation here was complicated. He said if we didn't mind, their organization would gladly welcome us to join. Hearing Sun Kuen call me Brother Jiang, Xiao Qi followed suit, his eyes holding a glimmer of hope, completely stripped of his initial arrogance. I just gave a faint smile, knowing exactly what he was thinking. In this apocalypse, even awakened had their limits. If they didn't rely on a major faction, they'd die sooner or later. As for a squad like my Shering squad, traveling across safe zones with just a single bus, no one would believe it even if I told them. I asked if his organization was founded by Ling Feng. Xiao Qi shook his head, saying their organization was called the Doomsday Beggars. Ling Feng's squad was just a small part of it. The Doomsday Beggars were the big bosses above his boss. I asked what the benefits of joining were. Xiao Qi immediately looked proud, boasting that the organization had vast connections. They had access to things ordinary survival squads couldn't even touch. Moreover, as long as we joined, even if we offended Blackwater, our safety would be guaranteed within their territory. Hearing that, I said I'd go take a look. I didn't care about Blackwater's threats at all. The only thing I was curious about was the leader of these Doomsday Beggars. Xiao Qi was thrilled when I agreed, saying he'd take me there right away. His boss was there too. He said a few words would settle everything. I emphasized that I was only going to take a look, but he kept smiling, repeatedly saying that just taking a look was fine too. We quickly left the shanty town and headed toward the dull gray concrete walls, the ground heavily scarred with deep tire tracks. Before us were vehicles parked haphazardly and a massive entrance leading underground. As soon as we stepped into the tunnel, a damp chill and a foul stench hit us. This was originally the underground drainage system of Heiyuan City. A massive pre-apocalyptic infrastructure project, it had now become a shelter and trading hub for survivors. When squads returned from hunting or looting, if they didn't go to the official markets, they'd come here for underground trading. This place was known as the Fifth Tunnel. Transactions here followed unspoken rules, and since it didn't affect the surface, the authorities turned a blind eye. Xiao Qi led us deep into a narrow, dark, and cold passage. After walking for over 10 minutes, the space suddenly opened up. Flickering lights were everywhere, and the noisy chatter of people echoed loudly. Stalls lined both sides, selling bloody mutant beast meat, firearms, ammunition, walkie-talkies, and even rare military gear. Under some crudely built awnings, illicit trades banned on the surface were taking place. I looked around. Compared to the black markets I had seen before, the Fifth Tunnel was vastly larger, and the daily trade volume was massive. Heavily made-up women walked alongside shirtless, burly men, squeezing through the dense crowd, creating a chaotic yet vibrant scene. Many people cast curious glances at Sun Kuen and me, but seeing that we weren't looking for trouble, they quickly looked away. Only Xiao Qi, being a familiar face, received a few friendly nods from other awakened. He even turned to brag, saying these people used to ignore him, and now they only greeted him because of the Doomsday Beggars. Sun Kuen rolled his eyes, sick of hearing him brag the whole way here. Finally, we stopped in front of a rough iron door set into the tunnel wall. Xiao Qi knocked heavily a few times. There was movement inside. A small slit opened to check us out before the door swung open. Inside was a cramped room with dim lighting. What surprised me was a TV mounted on the wall, displaying grainy surveillance footage from various parts of the Heiyuan safe zone. Clearly, they had installed a hidden camera network here. In the cramped room, 7 or 8 burly men were lounging around, including Ling Feng. When he saw Sun Kuen and me walk in, Ling Feng's eyes lit up. He jumped to his feet. He kept saying, "Great, great," told us to sit down, and then turned to urge Xiao Qi to hurry and pour some hot water for the guests. The other men didn't hide their probing and mocking gazes, looking Sun Kuen and me up and down. One of them let out a disdainful laugh, saying Ling Feng must be desperate to drag even normal humans into the squad. He also brought up how we had offended Huang Haiyu, getting a kill order from the entire Blackwater organization, and warned Ling Feng not to just take in anyone blindly. The moment he finished speaking, a blur of motion flashed before my eyes. I lunged forward, so fast he didn't even have time to react, and shoved a cold, black object straight into his mouth. It was my Type 54 pistol. After absorbing the evolution crystals, my stamina and reflexes had far surpassed what they used to be. My movements were so seamless that even ordinary awakened couldn't keep up. In just a single breath, from closing the distance to jamming the barrel into his mouth, it was over. Cold sweat poured down the burly man's forehead. He obediently crouched down, the icy murderous intent radiating from me silencing the entire room. Ling Feng looked at me with shining eyes, sneered at the guy, and said that if a normal human had that kind of speed and reaction time, his skull would have been blown off by now. He turned to the man, calling him Jiang Bupo, and told him he had clearly misjudged me. Boss Jiang might be young, but he wasn't one of his men. He was the captain of an elite awakened squad that had already been ranked C-class, whereas Jiang Bupo's squad had only just reached that level. As he spoke, Ling Feng tossed a piece of paper onto the table. I glanced at it and saw the Shi-Ing squad's information, with a bright red C marked next to our name. Below it was a note stating the information came from the government's External Survivor Statistics Department. I was a bit surprised and immediately recalled the strange look in Officer Chin's eyes when we entered the checkpoint. It was highly likely he had recorded this information and used his mental ability to make a preliminary assessment of my squad strength. I pulled the pistol out of Jiang Bupo's mouth, acting as if nothing had happened, and asked where their boss was. Ling Feng looked a bit awkward. Jiang Bupo stood up, rubbing his cheek, no longer daring to underestimate me, but still muttered that a C-class rating was just the government's initial assessment. True strength would only be proven over time. Besides, their boss was currently negotiating with a B-class outsider squad, so he told us C-class folks to wait a bit longer. I frowned at Ling Feng, clearly running out of patience. Ling Feng quickly explained that everything happened too suddenly. They had been negotiating with that B-class squad for a long time, but Blackwater's people suddenly jumped in to snatch them away. This led to a tense standoff between the two sides. He assured me their boss was genuinely interested in my squad and just hoped we could wait a little longer. I chuckled softly. This place was clearly the Doomsday Beggar's turf. Yet Blackwater's people still dared to barge in and fight for recruits. It was obvious how massive the power gap between the two sides was. If I didn't need to meet their boss to gather information, I probably would have turned and left a long time ago. Right at that moment, a terrifying roar echoed from above, so powerful it made my eardrums vibrate and my bones rattle. The Starseed's warning voice rang in my head, alerting me that an extremely powerful abnormal energy entity was approaching. My body instantly tensed up, my combat instincts kicking in. The screech of wind tearing apart echoed from afar, but the shockwave it caused was so massive that I didn't even need to look to know how terrifying its power was. On the surveillance screen mounted on the wall, I saw a colossal shadow appear in the sky southeast of the Heiyuan safe zone. Its wings spanned dozens of meters, blotting out the sky. Its beak was like a hook, and its two talons were as long as blades. Every time it flapped its wings, violent gusts of wind tore through the air, hurtling straight toward the safe zone. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It felt like I was facing a prehistoric monster bird. Its power was no less than the mutant pufferfish I had encountered in Shuangwu County. It might even be stronger. Emergency sirens blared across the city. On the screen, the monster bird dove straight toward the most densely populated residential area in the shantytown, seemingly extremely familiar with the defense layout here. Immediately after, a series of deafening explosions erupted. Artillery on the city walls roared, and heavy machine guns opened fire in unison. Even though the monster bird tried to dodge, its massive body still took hits. It shrieked in pain as feathers scattered and blood sprayed, then quickly retreated into the distance. I watched the scene in shock. If it weren't for the Heiyuan safe zone's formidable defense system, a monster like that alone could have leveled half the city. Xiaoqi breathed a sigh of relief, muttering that thankfully there was only one this time. The burly men in the room didn't look much better. I looked at Xiaoqi, catching something in his tone, and asked if this place was frequently attacked by monster birds. That's right. The Heiyuan safe zone has already survived 2 beast hordes. Xiaoqi lowered his voice, saying that the mutant bird just now had appeared during the last beast horde. Back then, there were 3 of them. They managed to kill 1, but the other 2 escaped. He hadn't expected it to return today. Hearing this, I was secretly amazed. The Zhonghai safe zone had suffered heavy losses after just 1 beast horde. Yet Heiyuan was still standing strong after 2. It was clear their strength was on a whole other level. I was just nodding when I suddenly felt my pocket lighten. My heart skipped a beat. Wait, where was Luoluo? I scanned the room and saw that the chubby Luoluo had woken up at some point, its eyes shining brightly. Its small body sprang up and darted straight toward the iron door leading to the inner room. What is this little guy trying to do? I gasped in surprise. Behind the door, in a sealed room thick with cigarette smoke, 4 people were sitting on 3 black leather sofas. The leader of the Doomsday Beggars, Ho Dinkuan, sat on the left. Looking displeased, he asked in a deep voice why the Black Water Organization, as powerful as they were, still had to fight them for recruits. The Fengshan squad had already practically agreed to join them. There was no need to turn the 2 sides against each other. He exhaled a cloud of smoke. Piercing through the haze was his cold gaze, fixed on the man sitting opposite him, the vice leader of Blackwater, Tang Changyang. Tang Changyang's face twisted in a fake smile. His face was covered in a web of scars, looking like it was stitched together from loose pieces of flesh. Even the slightest expression made him look terrifying. He scoffed, saying that practically agreed meant nothing until it was confirmed. Then he turned to the 2 men sitting in the middle, stating that the Fengshan squad, coming from the Zhonghai safe zone, should know better. The Blackwater Organization was the strongest faction in the 5th tunnel. Joining them was a win-win choice. The 2 men on the middle sofa exuded a fierce aura. One was a buzz-cut guy tearing into a piece of half-cooked mutant beast meat, blood still smearing his mouth. The other had a cunning smile and a sly gaze. He spoke up, saying the conditions offered by both organizations weren't enough. Their Fengshan squad was a B-class squad, reformed from elite teams in Zhonghai, with 13 awakened members. Even though they didn't have a Stage 2 evolver yet, their combat power was immense. With the reclamation order coming up, their value would be massive if they joined. It would be best if both sides showed a bit more sincerity. Hearing this, Ho Dinkuan glared at him angrily, reiterating their offer of housing in the B-class area, along with priority access to mutant beast meat and weapons. He demanded to know what the guy thought the Doomsday Beggars were. Wang Chuanfu just sneered, his eyes darting toward Tang Changyang. That attitude made Ho Dinkuan even more furious, but needing manpower in the current situation, he had to swallow his anger. Only then did Tang Changyang slowly open his palm, revealing a crystal glowing with a metallic sheen. The moment he saw it, Wang Chuanfu's eyes lit up. His Adam's apple bobbed, and his fists clenched. An evolution crystal. He recognized it instantly. This was something he had only ever seen in the hands of military awakened squads in Zhonghai. He had always dreamed of having one, but the government had a strict monopoly on them. The buzz-cut guy chewing on meat also froze, staring intently at the crystal, his breathing growing heavy. Tang Changyang said casually that as long as they joined Blackwater, they would match every condition the Doomsday Beggars offered. On top of that, they would provide evolution crystals, ones with a higher purity than those in Zhonghai. According to intel, it took about 3,100 caddies of mutant beast meat to produce just one crystal. He spoke with absolute confidence, knowing that the allure of an evolution crystal was something almost no independent awakened squad could resist. How many of these can you provide each month? Wang Chuanfu asked, his tone turning serious. Hearing this, Ho Dinkuan's face instantly darkened. They actually had evolution crystals. It wasn't just a rumor. This thing was a treasure. What awakened could possibly refuse it? Right at that moment, the door suddenly burst open. With a whoosh, a small shadow darted into the room at lightning speed. Before anyone could react, the mutant beast meat in the buzz-cut guy's hand vanished. On the cabinet against the wall sat a fluffy, long-eared little beast, its cheeks puffed out as it chewed furiously, looking like a cross between a cat and a rabbit. In just a few bites, it swallowed the meat whole, then let out a very audible, satisfied burp. Only then did the buzz-cut young man let out a furious roar like a wild beast. Wang Chuanfu's expression instantly changed, knowing all too well that this brother of his had no other hobbies besides eating. To him, that piece of mutant beast meat was more important than his own life. He quickly raised a hand to stop him, while turning to Ho Dingkuan to probe if that little beast was the boss's pet. Even though he looked down on the doomsday beggars, he didn't dare make enemies recklessly. Ho Dingkuan was momentarily stunned. He obviously had no idea where this little beast came from either. After a second of confusion, his face darkened. He turned furiously toward the door and yelled, demanding to know who let this animal in. Right then, I walked in wearing my black trench coat. Without hesitation, I grabbed Luoluo by its long ears. I glanced at the meat still stuck to its mouth, smelled the scent of mutant beast meat, and asked coldly if it had gone stealing food again. Luoluo looked up at me with innocent eyes, shaking its head repeatedly as if it understood me. I sneered, asking who would believe that, then stuffed it right back into my coat pocket. Right after, Sun Kuan rushed in with his rifle, standing close by my side in a protective stance. Ho Dingkuan, already boiling with anger and nowhere to vent it, saw two strangers suddenly appear, and his expression instantly turned ferocious. Ling Feng hurried in after us, looking a bit embarrassed as he explained that we were the beginner squad he had mentioned earlier, and this was just a little accident. Ho Dingkuan's eyes darkened as he looked Sun Kuan and me up and down. He obviously knew about the beginner squad that had arrived today, but his first impression was clearly not great. Tang Changyang let out a mocking laugh, saying that the doomsday beggars were taking in any random cats and dogs now. What kind of beginner squad even had normal humans in it? As he laughed, the web of scars on his face twitched, looking like cracked tree bark, making the sight even more gruesome. That sarcastic remark made Ho Dingkuan's face look even worse, because even he could tell I was just a normal human. Ling Feng had always been careful with his work, yet this time he made a mistake that got him ridiculed by others. I turned my head, my calm gaze locking onto Tang Changyang, and asked him exactly who he was calling cats and dogs. Tang Changyang's expression instantly changed. In the Heiyuan safe zone, no one had ever dared to speak to him like that. Right then, an excited voice called out my name from behind me. I looked closely and realized one of the two men on the sofa looked quite familiar. Seeing my confusion, Wang Chuanfu loudly introduced himself, saying he was from the Longyue squad in the Zhonghai safe zone and had fought alongside me against the mutant zombies. Thanks to that reminder, a few fragmented memories surfaced in my mind. There really was a Longyue squad that had fought alongside us, but it wasn't anything memorable. I asked if he had also left Zhonghai, then casually asked if the two scientists surnamed Su had made it to Heiyuan. Wang Chuanfu shook his head, saying the scientists were a government secret, and they couldn't get near them. I just gave an, "Oh," and didn't say anything else, since I didn't really have any ties with him anyway. The buzz-cut young man next to him suddenly stared at me wide-eyed, asking his boss if I was the legendary Jiang Lushi. Wang Chuanfu nodded in confirmation, which instantly made the guy excited. His eyes lit up as he said I was a legend and insisted on buying me a drink. I frowned slightly, completely clueless as to what this guy was so hyped about. Sun Kuan clicked his tongue beside me, muttering under his breath that it looked like I had become someone's idol. Wang Chuanfu looked at me and lowered his voice, saying that after I left Zhonghai, many awakened there treated me like an idol. There was even a rumor that I had killed a committee member named Chu. He practically whispered the last sentence. My heart skipped a beat, because that had actually happened. But I absolutely couldn't admit it, especially while standing in a military-controlled zone. I coldly denied it, saying it was just a rumor, and that once we left Zhonghai, we never went back. The buzzcut guy grinned and winked at me, saying he believed me, but his eyes clearly said otherwise. I didn't bother explaining further, since there was no proof anyway. In Wang Chuanfu's mind, the image of me killing the young master Chu Songming was still vivid, especially that bus that could transform into a mining vehicle. To him, that thing was a weapon of mass destruction. Not long after, Chu Songming's father also died in the night, supposedly assassinated by an elite squad from the outside. He had guessed right then that it was highly likely the Shuying squad who did it. Daring to storm a military zone, kill a big shot, and retreat safely. In his eyes, such capability could only be described as heaven-defying.